Serafina's Pov. I turned just in time to see a tray skittering across the marble floor, glasses shattering into a glittering mess. A young Omega in a waiter's uniform knelt on the floor, frantically trying to collect the shards with her bare hands, where red welts were already forming. Gasps and whispers rippled through the ballroom, but no one moved to help. Instead, the attention of the nearest guests was fixated on a tall Gamma male who stood just a few feet away, looking down at the Omega with a disgusted sneer. "You idiot, you almost spilled wine on my shoes," he barked. "Do you know how much these cost?" The Omega ducked her head. "I'm sorry, sir. I tripped, I didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" His voice rose high enough to garner whatever attention wasn't already on the spectacle. "You Omegas never mean anything until you ruin something. Maybe you should watch where you're walking instead of trying to flirt while on duty." Maya's jaw clenched. "Oh, hell no." She and I were instantly on the move, but then a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "What is going on here?" A woman in a crisp gray uniform stormed toward them. The head maid, Laura, I realized. I recognized her from past events I'd helped organize, like the Spring Moon Festival and the annual Solstice Ball. Although Leona was the recognized Luna of Nightshade as Kieran's wife, I'd helped in event planning, mainly sticking behind the scenes with the Omegas, who were much nicer to me than any other pack members. Except Laura. She seemed to think her position somehow elevated her Omega status and spent her time looking down her nose at anyone unfortunate enough to be under her. The head maid turned on the Omega. "What have you done, Imani?" Imani. My heart sank. I remembered her now. A hard-working, soft-spoken woman. She had a son, barely 4, and she worked double shifts out of pack duties to make ends meet. We'd spoken once about childcare struggles during pack events, and I'd once held on to her son while she worked. Panic and shame battled in her eyes before she lowered them and said quietly, "It was an accident." Laura's voice went cold. "Tonight is a night for perfection, and accidents, especially ones that inconvenience guests, will not be tolerated. How dare you embarrass Lady Celeste with your incompetence?" I'm sorry." Imani's voice trembled and my hands formed into fists. "Not to me," Laura snapped. "You will apologize to our guest, clean this mess up, and then we will discuss appropriate disciplinary action." "But he cornered me in the hallway, and then now," Imani whispered, just loud enough for us to hear. "I was just trying to get away." Laura didn't even blink. "Do not embarrass Lady Celeste with excuses. These guests are to be catered to without question." "But are you talking back after all this?" Laura raised her hand and I stepped forward before she could hit Imani. "That's enough." Laura turned slowly and her eyes widened when she registered who I was. Then her expression twisted into something tight and unpleasant. Well, she scoffed. "I must say it's strange seeing you among invited guests, not lurking in the background. That suits you better, so maybe mind your business." "I didn't come here to cause a scene," I said evenly, "but I won't stand by and let someone be punished for protecting herself." "This isn't your concern anymore," she sniffed. "You're not Luna, you're not even Alpha Kieran's shadow wife anymore. You have no say in how staff are disciplined." "I'm not claiming any title," I replied, "and I don't have to be part of the pack to call out abuse of power when I see it." "Listen here," the Gamma stepped forward. I didn't recognize him from Naifang. Was he a member of Frostbane? How ironic that I couldn't recognize members from the pack I grew up in. "This bitch," he pointed at Imani, and I heard Maya growl at my side, "doesn't know how to do her job right, so if—" "She said you cornered her," Lucian said, stepping forward, subtly putting himself between me and the Gamma. The Gamma scoffed. "So? You're going to believe the filthy lies out of a worthless Omega?" "Okay, I'm snapping necks," Maya snarled, but I held on to her arm before she could charge. We had a full audience now, and the music had been lowered, so I only had to raise my voice slightly. "Were there any witnesses?" I turned to the gawking crowd. "Did anyone see what happened?" There was a moment of tense silence filled with shuffling feet and whispers. The Gamma chuckled. "I don't know what you think you're—" I saw him back her into a corner near the east hallway when I went to the bathroom. A woman near the drinks table stepped forward. He was pressing in. The Gamma sputtered. "What? I didn't." "I saw what happened. another woman from the next table chimed in. He called her over for a drink and then grabbed her wrist. He was trying to pull her away. An older couple nodded solemnly. We noticed something as well. He seemed aggressive. A young waiter nervously stepped forward. He grabbed her wrist. I saw it too. She pulled away, and that's when she dropped the tray. The Gamma blustered. You people don't know what you're talking about. She's lying. Lucian stepped forward, calm and cold. Are you calling multiple guests liars? Because it's only your story that's different, and that sounds like grounds for disciplinary action to me. The Gamma paled. Laura's face tightened, turned to Amani, and said lowly, Go clean yourself up. We'll revisit this later. No, I said firmly. You'll apologize to her. Laura stared at me. Excuse me? You embarrassed her in front of dozens of guests for doing nothing wrong. You owe her an apology, and you'll do it the same way you berated her, publicly. Laura's face reddened. I answer to Lady Celeste, not to you. I folded my arms. And what about Alpha Kieran? Think he'll be pleased to know this is how you treat his staff. One thing I always admired about Kieran was that he never discriminated within his pack and treated everyone equally. I just hoped that wasn't another part of him that had been swept away under Celeste's glittery wave. Laura's face darkened, but before she could say anything, the Gamma huffed in disbelief and shoved through the crowd, the smugness gone from his features, replaced by fury of embarrassment. I'll be taking this to Lady Celeste, he growled, eyes flicking spitefully between Laura, Amani, and me. We'll see how long you keep your tongue then. He stormed off, pushing past a couple of younger pack members who didn't bother hiding their disdain. Amani stood frozen, hands clenched at her sides, gaze dropped in shame. Laura turned to her with a smirk curling the corners of her lips. Well then, you heard him. When Lady Celeste hears of this, there'll be consequences. You think anyone's going to back you up then? My hands balled into fists. I took a step forward. Are you seriously threatening her in front of half the party? After witnesses have spoken? Laura turned to me again, eyes narrowed with open contempt. You shouldn't get involved anymore, or you'll face consequences too. This time, Maya moved. What the fuck did you just say? Laura's eyes flickered uncertainly, like she didn't know if Maya was someone to be respected or not. Lady, I'm not a lady, Maya snapped. And clearly neither are you, I added. Laura's mouth fell open slightly at my tone, but before I could continue, Amani moved forward and caught my wrist. Please, she whispered, her eyes shiny with unshed tears. Please don't say more. I can handle it. I don't want to cause more trouble for you. I looked down at her, stunned. She was pleading for me, not herself. She thought defending her would put me in danger. A knot formed in my throat. You shouldn't have to deal with this, I said softly, but she only shook her head. This is how it is now, she murmured, since we started answering to Lady Celeste. We keep our heads down, do our jobs, and pray we're invisible. It's safer that way. It hit me like a slap. Imani wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every Omega under Celeste's thumb. I glanced around the room. Though the tension was thick, I caught several eyes, familiar ones, a few of the kitchen staff, a seamstress I'd worked with during past ceremonies, a beta who had once sought me out for event planning advice, people I used to know, people who remembered how things were, and people who now looked unsure, uncomfortable, even guilty. I turned back to Laura. If this is what the pack looks like under Lady Celeste's rule, then Kieran should be ashamed. Her eyes flashed. How dare you? You think you're still something in this pack? No, I said calmly, and I think I'm better off for it. I felt Amani's grip loosen, but I didn't step back. I stood beside her as the murmurs swelled, until Laura muttered something under her breath and finally turned away after shooting me one last glare. The moment shattered like a spell lifting. People drifted back into their conversations, though several eyes lingered on me, watchful. Intrigued. Amani exhaled shakily. Thank you. You don't owe me anything, I said. You're not the one who did anything wrong. Still, she gave me a quick, grateful nod before stepping away, tray trembling in her hands, but her back straighter than before. And I stood there in the middle of it all, stunned by the sugar-coated oppression, thinking of Kieran. Did he know this was going on? Did he care? The Kieran I once loved wouldn't have let this happen. He wouldn't have allowed Omegas to live in fear under the rule of someone like Celeste. But maybe that Kieran no longer existed. Serafina's povey. I don't know about you, Maya said as we turned back to our table, but that feels like the second sign that we shouldn't be here. It's only been 30 minutes and... Sarah! I froze as the third sign headed in my direction. Serafina, darling, my mother called, sweeping forward with the same grace she'd wielded at every charity gala, every fundraiser, every glistening pack event. Gone was the fragile widow who had brutally lost her husband, and in her place was the former Luna of Frostbane. Graceful, elegant, regal. Every bit Celeste's mother. Her arms wrapped around me before I had a chance to back away. Mother, I said stiffly, returning the embrace because I had no choice. I hadn't held my mother in years, and it was as uncomfortable and unfamiliar as hugging a mannequin. The scent of her expensive perfume clung to me even after she stepped back, and the smile she gave me was as bright as the chandeliers hanging overhead. "Oh, you look so beautiful tonight," she gushed, her eyes trailing over me appraisingly. I knew what she was doing, looking for flaws as usual. "I'm so glad you decided to come after all," she added. I tensed, but forced a smile. How could I not after you so desperately guilt-tripped me? Her smile tightened ever so slightly. Now, let's not make a scene, or at least not another one. She glanced behind me pointedly, and I knew she'd seen what happened with Imani. Her hand smoothed over my arm as if I were a pet. She was reassuring in public. This is an important night for all of us, especially for Celeste. She's worked so hard to make everything perfect. It would be a shame if it were disrupted. And here I thought you asked me to come to fulfill Father's dying wish, I replied sweetly. Silly me. I did. Her smile didn't falter, but I saw the tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth. So let's not ruin this occasion with old grudges, You wouldn't want to disappoint your father. The unspoken last part of the sentence hung in the air between us like a poisonous cloud. Again. Because I'd spent my whole life disappointing my father. Again and again and again. What old grudges? I tilted my head, my chest tightening. You mean my whole family treating me like I was less than my whole life? You mean being cajoled into attending this party that's basically to flaunt Celeste's superiority as if that's some kind of secret? My mother's smile slipped. This is what I mean. Do you have to be so delicate? This is Celeste's chance to finally have the happiness you robbed her of for 10 years, so... Margaret. Kieran's deep voice cut through the tension. She turned to him and her smile returned as if it had never left. Oh, Kieran, you look dashing. She was right. He stood stiff in a tailored ivory suit that shimmered faintly under the chandelier light. The lapels were trimmed with a fine gold thread that matched the elaborate cufflinks at his wrists and the gold pocket square. His hair was swept back with clinical precision, not a strand out of place. Dashing, yes, but too polished, too pristine. It looked as if, like every part of tonight, Celeste had taken over, and Kieran hadn't had a say in his own appearance. I'd never seen Kieran, dominating, confident, self-assured Kieran Blackthorne, look so out of place before. He gave my mother a tight smile, completely ignoring me. We're starting, he said. Oh, yes, my mother practically glowed. My speech! He placed a hand on her lower back and led her away. She gave me one last look, and I caught it loud and clear, the unspoken warning veiled as maternal concern. I knew that look. I'd grown up under its weight. It said, Behave. Don't you dare step out of line. I pursed my lips and looked away and caught Kieran's gaze. It was brief, only for one tense heartbeat, and his eyes were unreadable, his whole face expressionless, as if he'd built a mental cage and locked himself behind it. I felt Maya's warm hand on my back as I turned to her and Lucian. You good? I nodded, reaching for my champagne flute. Yeah, sure. We can still leave if you want. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd, and we turned to just in time to see a set of glass doors open on the second floor, and Celeste stepped out onto the top of the stairs like a queen descending into her court. The room held its breath. She glowed. I'll give her that. Every part of her screamed, See me! Gold from head to toe, hair curled into immaculate waves, a tiara of tiny diamonds balanced on her head like some deranged prom queen fantasy. Kieran joined her then, stepping to her side as they formed a blindingly stunning picture. I saw Celeste's vision come to life, a queen with her king. I had to grudgingly admit, they fit. More than he and I ever did. Her eyes met mine across the room, and she smiled. Not kindly, victoriously. A queen staring down at her vanquished opponent. But I straightened my spine and tipped my chin up, returning the icy smile. It widened when Celeste's expression flickered, and she looked away. The clinking of silver against crystal brought a hush over the crowd, and our attention shifted to my mother, who stood at the center of the stage, flanked by a spray of white orchids and golden lights. "Good evening, dear guests," she began, her voice brimming with maternal pride. "What a blessing it is to gather tonight to celebrate love that has endured storms, time, and distance, to celebrate fate finally fulfilling its promise." I gripped my glass a little tighter. As many of you know, Kieran and Celeste's bond was not always an easy one. Life took them down separate paths. She actually looked at me in case anyone was in the dark about the separate paths. But true love always finds its way back. I felt Maya tense beside me. Lucian raised an eyebrow. My mother smiled up at Celeste and Kieran. They were always destined to stand beside each other, and despite all the challenges, the truth of their bond has prevailed. I didn't need to look around to know people were glancing at me. Her words may have been wrapped in silk, but the barbs underneath were loud and clear. This wasn't a celebration. It was a coronation. And I was here as a prop, the defeated opposition. Why the fuck had I come? Was I truly this masochistic? Now, with the past behind them and nothing left in their way, they are finally ready to embrace the future the moon goddess had always intended. Let us welcome the new couple and give them our full support, our unwavering blessings. Celeste and Kieran descended the stairs to resounding applause. Celeste's smile was unsettlingly radiant, her gown shimmering as though it too demanded attention. Kieran looked dutiful, his expression carved from stone. They climbed the dais, perfect and poised, and Celeste gave our mother air kisses. The genuine, proud smile Margaret gave Celeste had me looking away. Not once in my whole life had my mother looked at me like that. "Thank you, Mother," Celeste said, her voice delicate, sweetened with artificial humility. "I couldn't have asked for a more supportive family. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. It means the world to us." She turned toward Kieran and brushed a kiss to his cheek. The crowd ate it up, and it seemed like I was the only one who noticed the tension in his shoulders. But tonight is not just about love. It's about healing and moving forward, and I can't do that just yet. I frowned. What was she playing at? Because there's one person whose blessing I haven't yet received, one that would make this union truly whole. Then she looked straight at me. No, she wouldn't. This was low, even for my sister Serafina. A collective hush fell. My blood ran cold as all eyes turned to me. The spotlight shifted like a physical weight landing on my head. My heart pounded, but not even from surprise. I should have seen this coming. Celeste never passed up an opportunity to perform. This was it, why she'd invited me to her stupid party. She wasn't going for subtle victory. No, she was going to make me kneel before her, metaphorically, albeit, and use my own voice to declare her winner. I was going to be sick. I don't know why, but my gaze shifted to Kieran. His expression was still unreadable, but there was a tightening around his mouth and eyes. Did he know she would do this? "Serafina," Celeste said sweetly, her eyes glinting, "would you grant me this wish?" The silence stretched, the air felt too thick to breathe. My hand trembled slightly around the stem of the glass. My mother's voice drifted from the edge of the stage, coaxing, patronizing. "Sarah, darling, don't keep us waiting. An ambush." That's what this was, and I'd been foolish to walk into it with my eyes wide open. What had I expected from a union of the two packs, the two families, that had betrayed and hurt me and ruined my life? Did I think this night would end with me unscathed? "Sarah?" There was a sharp undertone now to my mother's voice. "Won't you bless your sister's union?" Trapped. I was trapped. If I blessed the union, Celeste won. If I didn't, I would further paint myself the villain in their story, standing in the way of their happiness. My mouth felt as dry as sand as my lips parted. Serafina's Pove. I couldn't speak. The words wouldn't come, not because I didn't know what I was supposed to say, but because everything in me rebelled at the idea of playing along with this twisted performance. I'd been pushed into the spotlight like some reluctant understudy in a play I never auditioned for. I could feel the burn of every gaze on me, judging, waiting. And then, on stage, I saw Kieran roll his shoulders, his stiff mask cracking. He cleared his throat. "I don't think." A sharp crash shattered the moment. A gasp rippled through the crowd, and everyone turned. Glass had shattered near the corner of the ballroom. A wine table lay overturned, a pool of crimson spreading across the marble like spilled blood. The staff scrambled, voices rising in panic as the perfect illusion cracked. "Oh dear," Lucian said smoothly, his voice loud enough to carry across the room. "That was entirely my fault." My jaw dropped at the sight of him standing beside the toppled wine table, the remnants of a decanter dripping into a floral centerpiece. I hadn't even noticed him move from our table. His face was the picture of regret and mild embarrassment, but I saw the glint in his eye. It hadn't been an accident. "I'll pay for the damages, of course," he added, brushing invisible lint off his sleeve. "So sorry, Celeste, Kieran." I looked back up at the stage. Celeste's smile had faltered. My mother's gaze was scanning the room like a hawk, like she was trying to find the next mishap before it happened. And Kieran was looking directly at me. His expression was unreadable. What had he been about to say? Was he going to pressure me too? Celeste's voice, sharp and incredulous, cut across the murmur of reassurances. "You did that on purpose." Lucian looked at her and widened his eyes innocently. "Oh, come now." What could I possibly gain from interrupting such a beautiful moment? Kieran leaned over and murmured something in her ear. Her spine stiffened and she plastered her smile back on her face. "That's okay." Celeste's voice rang out, tight. "Let's not let that disrupt our night." She smiled, and my heart dropped. "Sarah." "Oh, I'm so sorry." Lucian was suddenly at my side. My companion was startled by the sudden ruckus. I blinked, realizing he was talking about me. His hand was suddenly firm and steady on the small of my back. "Come, Sarah. You're shaking." "I'm not," I started, but he leaned in close. "Let me play the villain tonight. You've done it long enough." I did not have to be told twice. I leaned into Lucian and closed my eyes. "Sorry, I feel faint." Celeste's incredulous scoff rang out, and I fought the urge to smirk. She wasn't the only one who could play a role, and just like that, I let Lucian lead me away. Celeste Povey. I watched them disappear through the crowd, fury bubbling beneath my perfectly painted exterior. The crack of glass still echoed in my mind, and the smug look on Lucian's face made my blood boil. He'd done it on purpose. I knew it. Everyone else might have been fooled, but not me. I'd planned every moment of this night down to the most minute detail, where I would force my sister to concede defeat in front of everyone. Perfect. I was not going to be robbed of my rightful victory. "Celeste," Kieran said lowly, "let it go." "Fuck that." I hitched my dress delicately and began to descend the stage, brushing Kieran's hands off. I was going to drag Serafina back on this stage and choke the blessing out of her if I had to. "Celeste, darling!" As soon as my glass heels descended the last step, I was enveloped by a flurry of voices and flashbulbs. High-ranking members from Nightfang, Frostbane, and other allied packs, the press, and all the fashion bloggers and socialites I'd invited, each one eager to bask in the glow of what they believed to be a fairy tale coming true. They saw the tiara, the gown, the golden lights behind us. They saw power and beauty and victory. Exactly what I wanted them to see. I smiled. Of course I smiled. This was what tonight was about, and I was not going to let Sarah ruin yet another thing I had worked so hard to acquire. So I put the bitch out of my mind and basked in all the attention. This was my hard-won right. Kieran had descended too, standing by my side, silent and stiff, but I didn't care. Not even whatever brooding episode he'd been having since I told him about the party was going to ruin tonight for me. Not when I was too busy being adored. Together, Kieran and I floated through the crowd, flashing cameras on our heels, accepting congratulations and compliments. "Celeste, you look like a goddess." "I always knew you two were fated. Tell us how it feels to be reunited with your true mate." Each praise wrapped around me like silk ribbons, and I'd almost completely forgotten my annoyance. Until, quite a stir earlier, one of the alphas, Walter Conlon of Silvercrest in Hollywood, murmured, swirling his champagne. I paused. "What do you mean?" He couldn't possibly be talking about Serafina and Lucian even after they'd left. If that snake had managed to steal my attention. Between the Gamma and the Omega, quite the spectacle. "Oh, Gamma Douglas had stormed into my dressing room earlier, furious because he'd been disrespected by an Omega and embarrassed by, surprise, surprise, fucking Sarah. Maybe inviting her was a bad idea. I blinked. Oh, that? I laughed lightly, flicking a hand. Just a minor disruption. I'll be sure to reinforce discipline among the Omegas. They haven't really had a firm hand yet, so they've been ill-mannered lately, but I assure you all that will change. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Yes, well, we wouldn't want things to get out of hand. Packs are watching. Beside me, Kieran stiffened. I completely agree, I said sweetly. A little structure never hurt anyone. They need to know their place. Alpha Walter chuckled dryly. Lady Celeste, you'll make an interesting Luna. I beamed. I will, won't I? I truly believe. Celeste. The air seemed to shift as Kieran hissed lowly. I turned to him and caught the flicker of something dark in his gaze. We should talk, he said under his breath, voice tight. In private. Oh, now? I arched a brow. But we're in the middle of... Now, Celeste. The tone brooked no argument. I pasted on a smile for the guests and waved demurely as Kieran took my arm. We walked through the winding corridor in silence, his grip just a little too tight, until we reached the side terrace. The door clicked shut behind us. What the hell was that back there? He asked sharply, stepping away from me. What do you mean? His eyes burned into mine. I heard Douglas whining to you, and that's how you resolved to treat the situation after what he did. He was disrespected by an Omega. Your Omega. I frowned. Is that how you run things in your pack? My pack runs on mutual respect, and position isn't permission to do whatever the fuck you want. I shook my head. Are we really arguing about gammas and omegas on our night? It's not just that. His fists clenched at his side. What the hell was that earlier? I sighed in exasperation. What now? Margaret's speech for starters, and then forcing Sarah into a corner like that? There it fucking was. It always had to come back to Sarah. She needed to give her blessing, I said tightly. It would have made everything cleaner. Cleaner? Kieran echoed, incredulous. You were trying to humiliate her, trying to assert your dominance. So? She deserved it. His jaw tensed. You don't get to decide who deserves what in my pack. My mouth dropped open. Your pack? Excuse me? He stepped closer, towering over me now. You are not Luna, Celeste. Not yet. You do not decide how things are run in my pack. If you pull this kind of stunt ever again... What? I snapped. You'll what, Kieran? You'll ditch me for Sarah again? Why don't we just call her back now, and you can reintroduce her as your Luna? He went silent, and for one tense moment I held my breath. But then, you're so quick to throw what happened 10 years ago in my face and berate me about caring more about Sarah than I care about you. But do you even care about me? I blinked. Excuse me? Not once did you ask about my opinion for tonight. You didn't care that I didn't have a say, that I was visibly uncomfortable. I scoffed. You're not a child, Kieran. If you're not comfortable, speak. You're just mad because I took control. No, he replied. I'm mad because you made me complicit in something I despise. I stood beside you like a statue while you turned this night into a show about power and cruelty. That's not leadership, that's theater. He shook his head and added softly, You humiliated yourself tonight. His words hit me like a slap, and my jaw simply dropped. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking tired. I need air. I waved a hand around the open space. How much more air do you need? Are you insinuating that I'm suffocating you? Kieran gave me one last scalding look before he turned and walked back inside, leaving me alone on the cold terrace, the applause from the ballroom muffled by the door. I clutched the railing, trying to breathe, wondering how my perfect night had turned into anything but Celeste's Pove. Kieran's words echoed in my mind even after he walked away, slamming the terrace door behind him. You humiliated yourself tonight. I stood there for a long moment, stunned, the cold air licking at my bare shoulders. The applause from inside had faded, replaced by a low hum of music and chatter. My special night was still unfolding, and here I was, left out in the cold. Kieran had never spoken to me like that before, and the sting was worse because I never expected it. I thought he'd stand beside me tonight, like he always used to, like he promised to. And yet, he looked at me like I was the problem, like I'd committed some kind of grave sin for wanting to have a perfect night to celebrate our love. How dare he insinuate that I don't care about him? If he didn't like his outfit or my decorations, then he should have said something. Wasn't that what couples did? They communicated and they faced issues together. I took a deep breath, forcing the flash of anger and irritation to subside. Kieran had spent the last 10 years married to a snake he didn't love. I shouldn't blame him if he didn't know how to communicate. I'd fix it. I wouldn't let the damage Sarah had done to him ruin my happiness. I was done letting her win. So I gathered my breath once more, and then opened the terrace door and stepped inside. I found Kieran near the bar, his hand wrapped around a tumbler of whiskey. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. I threw him a lavish party filled with the elite of the elite, and he chose to sulk at the bar? But I slapped on a smile and headed to him, slipping into character. I could still salvage tonight. All was not lost. He didn't look at me as I approached, didn't acknowledge me at all. "I'm sorry," I whispered, voice barely audible beneath the music. He didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. I stepped closer, brushing my fingers against the fabric of his sleeve. "You're right, baby, I went too far." He finally looked at me, brows raised. I've been trying so hard." My voice cracked, perfectly timed. "This is the first big thing I've put together since I came back. I wanted it to be perfect. For us." Kieran looked away, jaw tense. "I haven't been sleeping," I said softly. "I've barely been eating. I've been so obsessed with making sure everything comes out perfect, and I guess I got a little carried away." His prolonged silence gave me space to add more. "I didn't know the full details about the incident with the Omega, I swear. The maids must have misunderstood my desire for perfection and thought I wanted things stricter than I actually did. It's not what I intended." Kieran ran a hand down his face, sighing, and that small flicker of emotion, that weariness was all I needed. "I'm sorry," I said again, placing my hand gently on his arm. "And about Sarah. Oh, this one would be hard. This wasn't about hurting anyone, it was about healing. I guess I just went about it the wrong way." Kieran looked at me then, and there it was, guilt lingering in the corners of his eyes. He remembered that I wasn't cruel. I was sweet, lovely Celeste. I was the victim in all this. I didn't deserve his ire. "I shouldn't have snapped at you," he murmured, his voice low. I blinked rapidly, letting my expression twist into wounded gratitude. "I snapped at you too, and I'm sorry." I moved closer, suppressing a smirk when I saw a cameraman take a picture out of the corner of my eye. "I'm just trying, Kieran. That's all I've ever wanted, to make things right." He nodded, the tension in his shoulders softening. "I'm sorry too, and I appreciate what you tried to do tonight." I smiled, leaning in to kiss his cheek. For a moment, it felt like the rift between us had been patched over. Not healed, no, but masked, smoothed, like powder over a bruise. We stood together in silence, side by side, and when someone called our names from across the ballroom, he reached for my hand without thinking, and I smiled. Not from joy, but from victory. Serafina's po. Only when we reached the hallway outside the ballroom did the pressure of Lucien's hands on me dissipate. I sagged against the cool wall, the pounding in my ears slowly quieting. Lucien stood beside me, arms crossed, face unreadable as he glanced at me sideways. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice cracking with emotion. He didn't reply at first, just reached into his coat and handed me a folded handkerchief. "Hey, I did promise to keep you from throwing a punch, and it looked like it was coming." I laughed breathlessly, taking the handkerchief. I'm sure her media crew would have loved that. You don't owe them a performance, let them choke on their illusions. I let out a shaky breath, the burn behind my eyes spilling over. Lucien didn't try to comfort me with platitudes. He didn't ask if I was okay or tell me to pull myself together. He just stood there, patient and unwavering, offering comfort in his silence as muffled music and chatter floated through the closed doors. "I should have known she'd do something like that," I muttered after a while, dabbing at my cheeks. I walked into that room like a lamb to the fucking slaughter. "But she didn't win," Lucien said. "If she were truly victorious, she wouldn't need to humiliate you to prove it, and you didn't give her what she wanted." "Yeah," I exhaled. "Thanks to you." It was my immense pleasure. He gave a mock bow, and a ghost of a smile tugged at my lips. "I can't believe you did that." I shook my head. "You're going to be known in all the media outlets as the clumsy alpha." He wrinkled his nose. "Damn, I hope they got my good side." I smacked his shoulder lightly, laughing. Lucian. He caught my hand and interlaced our fingers. It was worth it, he said, his eyes softening. His hand around mine was warm, and instinctively I leaned into him. Do you want to get out of here? Sarah! Maya came bounding down the hallway, breathless and glowing, champagne glass in hand. Holy shit! She turned to Lucian. First of all, Lucian, that was inspired. Did you see Celeste's face? I snickered as she laughed, hopping excitedly. I am so sorry to interrupt, but I had to tell you before I exploded. Lucian raised an eyebrow, but Maya grinned, unfazed. I just came from the back garden bar, she said, barely able to contain herself. And people are not happy. I blinked. About what? She leaned closer, giddy. About her. Fucking Celeste. A bunch of the guests are complaining. They're saying the arrangements were all about flaunting wealth. Like someone actually said they didn't fly out here to admire fucking centerpieces. They wanted a real celebration, not a royal display. My lips twitched despite myself. And get this, Maya added, eyes gleaming. Some are even wondering if Kieran was behind all this, like his taste is being questioned. People think he's gone soft. Or worse, vain. Lucian chuckled. Sounds like the court of public opinion is shifting. I shook my head, my amusement suddenly fading. Of course, this wasn't Kieran's taste, and now Celeste was even ruining his reputation with her gaudy showcase. Come on, Sarah, Maya said, nudging me, noting my change in demeanor. You won tonight. They saw what she was really like. You didn't even have to say a word. I'm tired, Maya, I sighed. I didn't come here to win. I came here because I was guilted into it. I fulfilled my role. That's enough. Lucian's gaze flicked to me, something unreadable crossing his face. I'm leaving, I added. You're both welcome to stay, but I'm done. Maya shook her head. Didn't I say we should leave earlier? I'm with you, babe. There you are, a deep voice interrupted. Ethan? He strode toward us, adjusting the cuffs of his designer jacket, looking annoyed as if the very air around him wasn't meeting his standards. Where the hell have you been? He said to Maya. I've been looking for you all night. She arched a brow. I've been with Sarah and Lucian. Where have you been? Ethan exhaled in a huff. I told you that Celeste prepared a separate seating arrangement for her family. Do you realize how it looks that you weren't there? I wasn't even surprised to hear that. Of course, no one expected me there. So much for reuniting the family. Maya's grin faded instantly. Ethan. You just disappeared. I've been talking to people alone, everyone asking about my newfound mate. You didn't even answer your phone. I told you I was with my friends, she snapped. Gods, Ethan, it's a party, not an exhibit. I thought Celeste was the only one interested in flaunting her mate tonight. Ethan clenched his teeth. Let's go, he said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. I'm not leaving my friends. And what about me? He snapped. You're a big boy, she snapped back. I'm pretty sure you attended tons of parties before we met, so I stepped between them before the brewing argument could spiral. Maya, I said gently, placing a hand on her arm. It's okay, stay with him, I'll head out. But Lucian will take me home, I turned to him. Right? Lucian gave her a slight nod. Safely, I promise. Maya hesitated, her frustration evident, but I squeezed her hand and smiled. You've done more than enough for me tonight. Go. She shot Ethan a warning glare before walking ahead of him a few paces down the hall. He didn't even spare me a glance as he went after her. I caught the beginning of another argument as the door closed behind them. Lucian and I were alone again. Shall we? He asked, offering his arm. I took it without hesitation. As we walked into the cool night air, I realized something strange. I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I didn't feel angry anymore either. For the first time all evening, I wasn't playing a role. I wasn't the reluctant guest or the discarded wife or the pawn in a game I never agreed to. I just felt free. Maya's povey. Where are you going? Ethan called after me, his voice low and sharp as he pointed behind him. The party's that way. I scoffed, stepping out onto the garden terrace behind the hall. The party was still going strong inside, laughter, clinking glasses, the occasional clatter of silverware, but it all sounded like bothersome static in my ears. You're sorely mistaken if you think I'm going back to take any part in that farce. Ethan frowned. Maya, this is my sister's party. You have to learn to respect my family. I blinked at him for a long, incredulous moment, and his frown deepened. What? You're doing it again, I said. Doing what? acting like she's not your family too. Who, Sarah? Yes, Sarah. He shook his head, his lips flattening. Why the hell are we talking about Sarah again? Are you kidding me right now? I hissed. After seeing that bullshit your mother and Celeste pulled, you want to stay for the rest of the party? Ethan exhaled, rolling his eyes. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? I let out a sharp laugh. You watched them ambush her. You let it happen. Your sister practically held a knife to Sarah's throat, and your mother. Don't even get me started on that fucking vindictive speech. And you just stood there. Sarah wasn't ambushed. His voice was too calm, too controlled. My mother was trying to keep the peace. That's what she's always done, what my father wanted before he died. I stared at him, stunned. You think that was peacekeeping? She's trying to hold this family together, he said, to honor my father. You don't get it, Maya. You're right, I snapped. I don't fucking get it. Maya? I don't get how you can talk to me about holding your family together when you all treat Sarah like she's a cancerous tumor that needs to be cut out. She's your sister too, Ethan, and the fact that you act this way is pretty fucking disgusting. His eyes narrowed. Watch it. No, I said, stepping toward him. You watch it. You want me to respect your family when they treat Serafina like garbage? Fuck that. His hand came up, fast, firm, wrapping around my wrist before I could react. His grip wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was possessive. You will be my Luna one day, he said, eyes boring into mine. You will respect my family. I chafed against the command in his tone. And what if I decide that I don't want to be your Luna? His eyes hardened, a muscle ticking in his jaw. If you really care about Serafina, he said, voice tight, then becoming my Luna might be the only way you can protect her. I stared at him, and for a second I was so stunned I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, I shook my head. I'm having a hard time figuring out if you just threatened me, threatened Sarah, or made a fucking power play over me when you know. When Ethan's mouth crashed into mine, it stole the thoughts clean out of my head. I didn't fight it. Not right away. My mind went quiet as the mate bond pulsed between us like a lullaby, sedating everything bitter and angry inside me. Without consciously meaning to, I kissed him back. I gave in to the heat, the electricity crackling between us like a lightning storm. His hand gripped my waist, pulling him to me. My arms automatically wrapped around his neck, pressing our chests together. I moaned as his tongue slipped into my mouth, claiming, dominating. For a moment, I forgot my anger and indignation, and all that mattered to me was the kiss, the desire suddenly blasting through my synapses. This was different from all the other times Ethan and I had been intimate. The magnetic attraction between us was always there, but this felt like a leash. Like I wasn't in control of my actions, like I had absolutely no choice but to kiss him. I felt it then, that edge of control. The way Ethan shifted closer deepened the kiss, like he was claiming the last word in our argument. Like he was putting a period at the end of my sentence. He wasn't kissing me to comfort me. He was kissing me to shut me up. And the bastard was using our mate bond to make sure it worked. I shoved him back hard, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. I was suddenly cold where his hands had been, but I shot him the fiercest glare I could summon. Don't ever fucking do that again. Ethan looked stunned, offended even, and that pissed me off more because he had no right to feel that way. Do that again, I hissed, and you're going to be a very lonely alpha. If you can't have a fucking conversation without manipulating our bond to your advantage, then do me a favor and never speak to me again. He opened his mouth, but I didn't wait to hear whatever sanctimonious thing he was about to say. I turned and walked away, my heels crunching over the gravel with every furious step. I didn't realize how loud the night had been until I finally stepped into the silence of my home. Lucian followed me in, his presence steady and quiet behind me. I hadn't meant to take up more of his time, but when I turned to say goodbye, the words never made it past my lips. I didn't want to be left alone. If I were, the memories, the weight of the watching eyes, the scent of the cloying perfumes, the ugly, panicky feeling, they'd all return and ruin my night. Stay? I asked instead. He nodded without hesitation. I left the lights dim as we moved into the sitting room. I turned on the fireplace, and the soft amber glow gave the space a warmth that soothed my mental aches. I curled up on the corner of the couch, legs tucked beneath me, my dress tangling between. Lucian sat a little ways off, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. I knew I should offer him something to eat or drink, be a good host, but I felt so mentally drained, and I knew that Lucian never expected me to be anything other than what I was. For a long time, we didn't say anything. I just let the comfort of his presence wash over me. How are you? A ridiculous question, he asked after a while. A light laugh fell out of me as I turned to look at him. Probably. His eyes were fixed on the fire, the flames dancing in the pools of his irises. I hated seeing you like that, he added, softer now. Surrounded by people pretending you don't exist unless you're useful or a spectacle. You deserve more than that. I shrugged. It's whatever. No, Sarah. He slid closer and took my hand in his. It's not whatever. I don't ever want you to let anyone make you believe you deserve to be treated as anything less than the amazing, strong queen you are. The words undid something in me. I didn't even know I was holding my breath until I exhaled, shaky and slow. Why? I whispered. His brows furrowed. Why what? I shrugged lightly. It just seems like you care about me a lot, and I don't understand why someone like you would. He shook his head. I don't understand why you would be confused. How do you not see yourself the way I see you? Emotion lodged in my throat. And how do you see me? Lucian didn't answer. Instead, slowly, he reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His knuckles brushed my cheek. It was barely a touch, but something lit up between us. Neither of us moved at first. Our eyes locked, and I could feel my pulse skittering in my throat. There was no demand in his gaze, no heat pressuring me forward, just quiet permission. And then he kissed me. I froze slightly, my breath hitching. The warmth of his lips was foreign, but nice. I thought about my conversation with Maya, how disappointed I felt when I woke up in her house the morning after Lucian and I had been drinking together. I didn't want to wake up tomorrow and regret not saying something, doing something. So I leaned in and kissed him back. It was slow, almost hesitant at first, as if he was giving me every chance to pull away. His lips brushed mine like a question rather than a demand, warm and careful. There was no rush, no claiming, just presence. It didn't burn through me, didn't send my heart racing like a prized stallion, not like Kieran's kiss. I deepened it slowly, my hands finding the soft fabric of his shirt. He responded with a soft inhale, his hands still at his sides like he was afraid to move too soon. When he did finally touch me, it was with steady, respectful hands, one palm at my jaw, the other at the curve of my neck, like I was a fragile thing he feared would break. I could feel his resistance, his reverence, and I was just about to speak, to tell him that it was okay to be a little assertive. I didn't mind a little heat. I wanted this, wanted him. But then the shrill sound of my phone shattered the moment. Lucian's pov. Hi, honey. Under the soft glow of the light from the fireplace and the screen of her phone, Sarah's cheeks tinged pink as she smiled at her son. Hi, Mom. Daniel's bright voice came through the device. I wanted to call to know how the party went. Sarah's eyes darted to me over the phone, and she gave me an apologetic look. I shook my head, mouthing for her to take the call. I saw her war with the decision between talking to her son and addressing what had just happened between us. But I made the decision for her. I stood from the couch, putting distance between us. I pointed to the door and mouthed, I'll see you tomorrow. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but then, Mom? Daniel called out. Are you busy? I can call back later. Oh, no, honey, she said, turning her attention back to her phone. I'm here. I can talk. When her eyes met mine again, I smiled. Good night. She returned the smile hesitantly and gave me a shy wave before reverting her attention to her son. As I headed towards the door, I tried not to see the phone call as a blessing in disguise. When I stepped outside, the air hit me like a balm, cool and refreshing. I drew in a breath and let it out slowly, watching the mist bloom in the night air. My fingers came up to caress my lips, still warm from the kiss, and disappointment tightened my chest. I guess I should have known it wouldn't be the same, no fireworks or heat or electricity. But still, the hollowness of the kiss unsettled me. It had been warm, gentle, nice, even, but that was all. No spark, no soul-deep recognition, no echo of the kind of pull I'd once known. I should have felt triumphant. Sarah was finally opening up. She trusted me, leaned on me, I was one step closer to my goal, but it didn't hold the satisfaction I'd hoped for. Sarah was amazing. Beautiful, smart, kind, stronger than she gave herself credit for. I didn't think I would have to feign as much as I did tonight. I'd been the one to kiss her, and despite all the hurt she'd experienced, she returned the kiss and I'd accepted it with care. But there had been no fire in it, not for me. And yet, the ache that followed wasn't disappointment in her. It was in myself. With a muttered curse, I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Where are you?" I asked as soon as Reese picked up. "OTS," my beta answered. "Just about to head home." "Stay there," I commanded. "I need a drink." He paused. "Everything all right, Alpha?" Sarah's laughter floated out of an open window and I sighed. It was a soft, musical sound, but it didn't send my heart racing, unlike I shook my head even though Reese couldn't see me. Nothing whiskey won't fix. But even as I stepped off Sarah's porch and headed towards my car, I knew that no amount of whiskey could fix the cavern in my chest that had been growing wider and wider for a long time. "So," Reese said later, eyeing me from the corner of his eyes, "are congratulations in order?" I stared at the amber liquid in my glass, my chest warm from my first 2 glasses. The whiskey was strong enough to burn, but not enough to blur. "What are you talking about?" "I can smell her on you," Reese said, "Serafina." I gripped the glass a little tighter at the mention of her name. The low-lit, muted ambiance of my private lounge on the roof of OTS only served to worsen my mood. "It's not like that," I said quietly. "We just kissed." Reese exhaled a small puff of air. "That's great." He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. "Congratulations," I scoffed, taking a huge gulp of my drink. "I'm really glad you're doing this," he continued. "I'm happy you're moving on. You haven't let yourself be with anyone since." "Don't," I growled. I gripped the glass so hard that cracks spiderwebbed around it. "Don't dare say her name. Not when I was trying so hard not to think of her. Not when I was fighting with the consuming ache of missing her." Reese frowned. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "We're sparring," I interrupted coldly, slamming my glass on the table. He blinked. "What?" I needed an outlet for the energy and a distraction from the disappointment suddenly coursing through me. Now. I stood, already moving toward the exit. Reese cursed under his breath but followed. He knew better than to argue when I got like this. The sparring arena was empty at this hour, bathed in cool shadows and the lingering scent of sweat and salt. I stripped off my tuxedo jacket, rolled my sleeves, and stepped into the ring. Reese followed, cracking his neck. "You sure you'd rather not talk about it?" "No. Didn't think so. We didn't need rules. We'd done this enough times." The first hit landed with a satisfying thud. Reese grunted, but didn't retaliate immediately. He let me come at him again, testing the weight of my frustration, the sharpness of my control. Then he struck back, low and fast. We fell into a familiar rhythm, fists meeting flesh, breath quickening, the sound of our bodies replacing the chaos in my head. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to feel. But as my muscle memory kicked in and my mind cleared out, her face kept appearing. Not Sarah's. The woman whose laughter used to light up OTS headquarters before it even had a name. The one who taught me that power was nothing without purpose. I'd spent so long trying not to remember the radiance of her smile, the sparkle in her eyes, and now it was all I could see, and the longing hit me harder than the whiskey. I ducked a punch too late and Reese's fist clipped my jaw. I staggered but stayed upright. He shook his head, winded. "You're distracted," he muttered. "No fucking shit," I spat. I lunged again, and this time we tangled. Arms locked, elbows grinding, sweat beading across our brows. I twisted out of his grip and drove a fist into his gut. He swore and doubled over, but I was already stepping back, chest heaving. The rush came like a wave, then receded just as quickly. What was left was a dull, dragging weight that pulled me down to the ground. I collapsed to the mat, lying flat on my back, the ceiling a blur above me. Reese dropped down beside me, wheezing. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" he asked after a beat. I stared at the beams above. It wasn't there. What? The spark. The pull. I knew I was capable of feeling that innate explosive attraction, just not with Sarah. Reese was silent for a while. "But you still want her." I closed my eyes and tried to banish her face, tried to replace it with Sarah's. It shouldn't have been hard. They had the same golden hair, the same sweet smile, but Sarah's didn't pierce through my heart like a fucking javelin. Yes, because of the pack. Sarah didn't know it, but she had the potential to be the greatest she-wolf of her generation. That combined with her kind heart and humility, she was the Luna my pack needed. Yes. And what about your heart? Her smile drifted to the surface of my mind, vibrant, teasing. Gone. I sat up slowly, joints stiff. That has nothing to do with this. It doesn't change what I've decided. Sarah will be my Luna. Reese nodded. And you think she deserves to be in another loveless marriage? I drew my knees up, my fists clenching. It won't be the same, I declared. I'm not Kieran. There was no spark between me and Sarah. I doubted I would ever feel sparks again, but I truly cared for her. Sparta I'd loved once, deeply, intensely, so ferociously that when it ended, it tore my heart apart and rendered me unable to feel the same way again. So I'd give Sarah what I had left, my protection, my respect, my loyalty, my partnership, even if my heart still belonged to a ghost, Serafina's Pove. I'd spent all night thinking about the kiss. I finally got a couple hours of sleep, but as soon as I woke up, it was the first thing on my mind. It had happened less than 12 hours ago, and yet it replayed in my head with a gentle ease and familiarity, like a memory that had already been playing on loop for years. The best part was that the memory of Lucian's kiss didn't drive me crazy the way Kieran's had. It had been warm, not fiery and gentle, not hard and demanding and possessive. I wasn't trying to decipher intentions or force my erratic heart into a non-cardiac arrest-inducing rate. But it had still mattered. I'd felt safe, cradled in the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his body. There had been something quietly reverent in the way he held me, like I was made of something sacred, not shattered pieces barely held together. And that was new. The fact that there was a man in my life who didn't make me want to put my fists through a wall was so refreshing. As I made breakfast, I kept glancing at my phone on the kitchen counter, half hoping, half dreading a message from him, but it stayed dark. Would things be awkward now? Should I have said something before he left? Should I have asked Daniel to call back? Would Lucian think I regretted it? Because I didn't. If Daniel hadn't called? I flushed just thinking about it. Maybe something more would have happened. I wasn't sure how far I would have gone. I wasn't sure how far Lucian would have gone, but I don't think I would have stopped him. The idea of being with someone else, with Lucian, wasn't as off-putting as I would have thought. I bit my lip, smiling down at my diced tomatoes like they were the ones responsible for the warmth and anticipation stirring in my belly. The idea that someone like Lucian, an alpha, a man of his strength and reputation, wanted me, still felt surreal. I wasn't used to being wanted, not after spending 10 years as little more than an avenue to satiate my otherwise cold husband's needs while he pined after someone else. The sudden ring of the doorbell broke through my reverie, loud and sharp in the quiet house. I frowned, wiping my hands on a dish towel. I wasn't expecting anyone. That wasn't true. I was fully prepared for either Celeste or Kieran to be on the other side of the door for our regularly scheduled altercations. But when I opened the door, it was Maya who stood there with a 6-pack of beer in one hand, a plastic bag of snacks in the other, and an odd look of vulnerability that screamed, "Please don't send me away." "Isn't it too early to be drinking?" I asked with a raised brow. "Not if I intend to drink for the rest of the day," she said, breezing past me. "You'll take care of me if I black out, yeah?" I closed the door behind her and followed her into the kitchen, a confused frown on my face. "Are you okay? Did something happen?" She didn't answer right away, just tossed the bag onto the counter and started unpacking. Popcorn, chips, chocolate-covered pretzels. Comfort food. A silent alarm bell went off in my chest. Can't a girl just decide she wants to have an emotional breakdown with carbs and alcohol? "A girl can," I said. Maya Cartridge, whose body is a temple and has more mental fortitude than a monk, can't, not unless something is seriously wrong. I handed her a bottle opener, waiting. Her beer opened with a quiet fizz, and she threw her head back, downing half of the bottle in one go. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and sighed. "It's Ethan," she finally said, voice quiet but hard-edged. I leaned against the counter, my chest tightening. "What did he do?" "We fought after I left you and Lucian. I confronted him about how he let Celeste and your mom corner you like that, and instead of admitting it was wrong, he told me to respect his family and then dangled a threat over my head. I winced. What the fuck was wrong with my brother? And I told him, she said, slamming the bottle down a little too forcefully, that you're his family too, that he couldn't demand my respect if he didn't give you yours. My stomach twisted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't want to cause problems between you two. Don't, Maya snapped, eyes flashing. Don't you dare apologize for existing. I blinked. You didn't ask to be the family's punching bag, she continued, voice tight with fury. You're not the problem. I'm mad because they treat you like you are. I looked down, my throat thickening. Besides, she muttered, softer now, if Ethan can't see through the bullshit, if he can so thoroughly defend his mother and sister like that, then maybe he's not who I thought he was. My eyes widened. Maya. She looked over at me, brown eyes suddenly serious. You know what's cruel? What? The mate bond. Her words were bitter, bitten off. This fucked up magical lottery that says you're permanently, irrevocably bound to this other person, no matter how dumb or frustrating or emotionally constipated they are. That bad, huh? If it weren't for the bond, Maya muttered, I would have walked away a long time ago. I tilted my head. Would you? Yes, she formed a fist. But you love him. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Maya groaned, leaning her forehead against the cabinet. Right? I nudged her gently. It's not just the mate bond. She sighed. Okay, so maybe I like the sound of his laughter, and maybe I like watching horror movies with him late into the night and falling asleep on his chest. I like it when we cook together, and I like the electricity when we're intimate. There's this mind-numbing thing he does with his tongue that... Okay, stop. I held a hand up, eyes wide with alarm. I don't need to hear about you and my brother's sex life. We burst into laughter, but hers ended in a sigh as she hesitated. Okay, so yeah, maybe I care for him past the mate attraction, but he's still an asshole. And I usually think with my head, not my heart or fucking hormones, and the stupid bond keeps pulling me back every damn time. There was something painfully honest in her voice. I nodded slowly, letting that truth settle between us. I've always wondered, I began, then trailed off. She looked up. What? What it's like, I said, heat crawling up my neck. The pull, the way it feels with someone who's destined. Maya blinked, then narrowed her eyes with the speed of a predator. Is this a general curiosity question, or am I sniffing gossip? My cheeks burned. I was wondering. You're a terrible liar, Sarah. I gave her a sheepish smile. Her eyes widened. Wait, did something happen? Her voice dropped to a whisper. With Lucian? I couldn't meet her eyes. We kissed. The scream she let out was so high-pitched, I was surprised all the windows in my house didn't shatter. You what? She shrieked, grabbing my arm and shaking me. You kissed Lucian, and you're just now telling me? It wasn't planned, I stammered. It happened last night. We were just sitting on the couch talking, and then, I shrugged, he kissed me. Maya dropped onto a stool as if her legs had given out. Okay, I need more. Was it hot? Was it soft? Did you melt? Did the world stop spinning? It was. I paused, trying to find the words. It was nice, gentle, sweet. Her brows knit. That's it. I chewed my lip. There wasn't a spark, not like what you described with Ethan. Oh. The silence stretched. But I don't think it's because I didn't like it, I added quickly. I mean, I liked it. I really did. But it felt like, I dunno, like he was holding back. Maya hummed thoughtfully, nodding. Lucian would hold back. He's the definition of restrained, gentlemanly to a fault. You think that's all it was? She grinned. Oh, I know that's all it was. Sarah, I've seen the way he looks at you. If he were a cartoon, he'd have hearts for eyes. I smiled despite myself. If he's holding back, Maya continued, it's not because he's not interested. It's because he doesn't want to hurt you or cross any lines, especially since he knows what you've been through. He was raised to control his instincts. If you want him, you might have to make the first, or second, I guess, move. I hesitated. You think I should? I think, Maya said, reaching over and squeezing my hand, that if you feel something for him, really feel it, you should give yourself a chance at happiness. You deserve that. After everything, you deserve to feel loved and wanted. My throat tightened. You make it sound easy. It's not, she admitted, but I'll be here and I'll be rooting for you every step of the way. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and nodded. Later, After Maya had passed out on my couch with an empty bag of pretzels on her stomach and her third beer bottle balanced precariously on the armrest, I tiptoed to my bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in my hands. I stared at Lucian's contact, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't want to overthink it. I didn't want to scare him away either. After several drafts and deletions, I settled on something simple. Sarah, thank you for last night. I keep thinking about it. I hope you got home safely. I stared at the message for a few seconds before pressing send. Then I tossed the phone onto the bed like it might explode and buried my face in my hands. Gods, I was a mess. But a small smile tugged at my lips. My phone buzzed less than a minute later, and Lucian's reply had my smile blooming into a full-on grin. Lucian, I kept thinking about it too. Can I see you tomorrow? A giddy giggle spilled out of me as I tapped back a response. The fluttery feeling in my stomach had nothing to do with the small sip of beer I'd had, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this way about anyone. But I liked it. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. Serafina's Pov. Maya had insisted that if I was going on a date, even if it wasn't officially a date, I needed to look hot enough to make him forget his name. Her words, not mine. She'd spent nearly 20 minutes rummaging through my closet with all the intensity of someone defusing a bomb, tossing aside sweaters and jeans like they'd personally offended her. When she pulled out a lacy wine-red slip dress I didn't even remember owning, I'd nearly fainted. You expect me to wear that to the movies? She'd just arched a brow. Don't forget the dinner after. Besides, it's not about the movie. It's about the impression you leave with Lucian. He's not supposed to be able to watch the movie. He's supposed to be watching you. I shook my head. I'm going to feel so awkward the whole time if I wear that. She rolled her eyes and tossed the dress into the back of my closet where it belonged. Okay, do you at least have sexy lingerie? My eyes bulged out of their socket. What? Maya, we're watching a movie, not... My face burned. She winked. You never know what could happen, and you should always be prepared. I tossed the Boy Scout out of my room. In the end, I didn't wear the dress, or the heels she left behind as a backup option in case you grow a spine. Instead, I went with my favorite black jeans, a soft mauve blouse that hinted at femininity without being overly sultry, and white sandals. No makeup other than tinted sunscreen, a light coating of mascara, and sparkly lip gloss. Simple, casual, me. This was my first proper date with a man. Not a forced dinner or event orchestrated by pack politics. Not a night I had to endure as the figurehead wife for Kieran's image. This was just Lucian and me. And that felt monumental enough without the need for push-up bras and smoky eyeshadow. He picked me up right on time, dressed in a dark gray button-down with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, exposing his striking tattoo and slacks that did a poor job of hiding just how ridiculously built he was. But what caught me off guard, as always, was the softness in his eyes when he saw me. That kind of open admiration wasn't something I was used to. You look beautiful, he said. I smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. You clean up well yourself. And then, his left hand came out from behind him, holding a bouquet of pink carnations. My lips parted in a small gasp. How did you... It wasn't even that he brought me flowers, something no one had ever done before. It was that they weren't generic roses or some flashy, store-bought bouquet. They were pink carnations, my favorite. Lucian smiled, and my heart did a flip. I see you, Sarah, he said, handing me the flowers. Carnations aren't the flashiest, mostly overlooked, but they're strong, quietly beautiful, like you. My eyes pricked with sudden tears, and I thanked the gods I didn't use eyeliner. Our fingers brushed as I took the bouquet, and my voice was soft, a little shaky when I said, "Thank you, Lucian." He didn't say anything, just gave me that look again, warm and steady and so full of quiet understanding it nearly undid me. I clutched the flowers tightly as we walked to his car. The drive was comfortable and fun. Lucian let me pick the music, and when I chose an old 80s rock playlist, he didn't bat an eye, just grinned and drummed his fingers on the steering wheel like he already knew the songs. The movie theater was mostly empty when we arrived, which was a relief. The last thing I wanted was to run into anyone I knew. Not that I was ashamed of being out with Lucian or anything. It's just that the people I knew all shared the remarkable ability to ruin my day with their mere presence. Lucian got the tickets while I hovered near the popcorn stand, feeling awkward and fidgety. He returned with 2 bottles of water and a shared bucket of popcorn. "Figured we'd go old school," he said with a shrug. I smiled. I like old school. 10 minutes into the movie, I cursed myself for considering Maya's suggestion when Lucian asked me to pick a movie. The title of the film sounded harmless enough, until the last breath. When I asked Maya what it was about, she just shrugged, smirking. I should have fucking Googled it. I thought it was a drama, maybe a slow-burn romance with lots of longing glances and sad piano music. What it was, I wanted to melt into a puddle and evaporate under the heat of my burning cheeks. For my first date with Lucian, thanks to Maya fucking Cartridge, I'd picked what was essentially 90 minutes of softcore porn, with a sprinkle of emotional warfare. The worst part was that the sex wasn't the in-your-face kind, but the kind with long stares, heavy breathing, moaning, a shit ton of moaning, and music that swelled at the exact wrong time. The kind that reminded you what it felt like to be touched, like you mattered, which unfortunately I hadn't felt in a long time. At first I tried to focus on the plot. The 2 characters met in a rainy bookstore. Cute. Then they went on a picnic and somehow ended up half naked under a tree. I shifted in my seat, pressing my legs together like a chastity measure. Lucian, of course, sat completely composed, like he was watching an educational documentary and not a film that should have come with a trigger warning titled "Not Safe for the Sexually Starved." 3 rows ahead of us, a couple started making out, their moans mingling with the ones coming from the speakers. I wanted to die from embarrassment. Would Lucian think I picked this movie because I wanted to do that? Fucking Maya. But Lucian didn't look or seem as flustered as I did. He didn't stare at me, didn't edge closer. He just sat there, eating popcorn, sipping his water, and existing like the incredibly respectful man he was, which somehow made everything worse. By the time the 4th naked scene rolled around, you could fry eggs on my cheeks. I didn't dare look at Lucian. But when the film reached its emotional climax, the protagonist reading a letter from her now-dead lover about how love wasn't about timing but about choosing someone every day, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. Lucian's hand gently closed over mine, warm and grounding. I glanced sideways and found him looking at me, a soft smile playing on his lips. Then he lifted our joined hands slightly and pressed a soft kiss to my knuckles, and he didn't let go. That single gesture carried more emotion than anything I'd seen on screen, and suddenly I didn't feel flustered or overwhelmed. I felt cherished. After the credits rolled and the lights came up, I stood, still a little dazed. Lucian didn't let go of my hand until we were out of the theater. Then he smiled and motioned toward the concession stand. "Stay here. I'll get us something sweet before we go." I nodded and watched him disappear into the crowd. My phone buzzed in my pocket, so I stepped aside near the wall to check it. It was Maya. So, did the movie set the mood? Did you 2 make out in the back like horny teenagers? I laughed despite myself and started to type a reply when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, you here alone?" I turned, surprised to see a tall, lanky teenager, maybe 17, grinning at me like he'd just won the lottery. No," I said politely. "I'm waiting for someone." He looked me up and down, then leaned against the wall beside me. "Boyfriend?" "Sort of," I replied. He chuckled. "You look too hot to be with a sort of." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "I mean, not in a creepy way," he added quickly, his gaze leering. "Just saying, you're like smoking, in a MILF kind of way." I stared at him, mouth slightly agape. "I've always had a thing for older women," he continued, undeterred. "Age is just a number, right?" "I think," I said carefully, "that you should go find someone closer to your age." He laughed like I just flirted back. "What, you don't like compliments?" I was about to shut him down, gently but firmly, when a familiar voice sliced through the air, smooth and venom-laced. "She likes compliments, just not from someone young enough to be her fucking son." My stomach plummeted. I turned slowly to see Kieran standing just a few feet away, arms crossed, dark eyes drilling into the teenager like he was about to shift and eat him whole. And there goes my perfect day. Kieran's pove. I should have stayed at home. That thought repeated like a dull drumbeat as I stood near the concession stand. hands in my jacket pockets, pretending to inspect the overpriced popcorn. I wasn't even hungry. I was supposed to be out clearing my head, burning off steam after yet another exhausting round with Celeste, who was trying to spin my life into yet another PR stunt. It had taken all my willpower not to smash in the skull of the pasty-faced cameraman she'd invited over to shoot a day-in-the-life video of reunited mates. But instead of driving aimlessly as planned, I found myself taking the familiar path to Griffith Park. While I was still berating myself for coming to Sarah's house, an annoyingly familiar Aston Martin pulled into her driveway, and when I saw him escort Sarah to his car as she clutched a huge flower bouquet, all bets were off. And that's how I ended up trailing Lucian Reed's stupid red sports car through the streets of LA like some lovesick lunatic. I should have called it quits when they walked into the theater. I should have turned the fuck around and gone anywhere but here. Instead, I bought a ticket to whatever show they were seeing and sat 2 rows behind them, close enough to observe, far enough not to be seen, completing my descent into deranged stalker. Pathetic. At first, I convinced myself it was harmless curiosity, making sure she was safe. Lucian might have been polished and charming, but I still didn't trust him. Except, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He didn't even put his arm around her when the lights dimmed and the movie started, some overly sentimental romance if the piano score was anything to go by. I tried to watch to focus, but all I could see was them. They weren't touching or talking or doing anything other than watching the movie, which was better off showing on Pornhub than at a respectable cinema. And that should have made me happy. But I kept glaring at the sliver of space between them where their shoulders brushed when one of them took a deep breath. And then came the moment that snapped the last thread of my restraint. Lucian reached over slowly and took her hand. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. She let him hold it. A second later, he turned it palm up and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. She didn't pull away. That was the moment I stood up and stormed out of the theater like a bomb about to detonate. My vision burned from irritation and fury and a raw ache I didn't have a name for. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I leaned against the building wall, dragging in a deep breath and forcing my thoughts into order. I had no right to feel this way. Sarah wasn't mine anymore. Hell, she never really was, not in the ways that mattered. I'd never loved her like a husband should love his wife. Never taken her out on a date or bought her flowers. She deserved this, to be with someone who cherished her and took care of her. Good. That was good. I'd moved on now. I was with Celeste. I shouldn't have cared what Sarah did in her spare time or who she did it with. So why did it feel like I was being gutted from the inside? I was about to leave, keys already clenched in my fist, when I heard the voices. Loud, unruly, male. My gaze flicked toward the theater doors. A group of teens loitered by the entrance, laughing and jeering among themselves, their attention fixed on one of them who had peeled away. My brows arched when I followed their line of sight. He stood too close to Sarah, where she waited near the theater, Lucian nowhere in sight. His body language screamed cocky as he leaned in, arms crossed like he owned the place, smirking down at her as he said something I couldn't hear. But I saw the way Sarah stiffened, saw the tight-lipped smile and the tension in her shoulders. I was moving before I even made the decision. I was within earshot as the boy laughed like Sarah had cracked a joke. What, you don't like compliments? She likes compliments, I said, voice low and deadly, just not from someone young enough to be her fucking son. The teen paled, his expression briefly flickering with unease, then settling into something smug. Kieran, Sarah said, eyes narrowing. What are you? Is there a problem here? I asked tightly, ignoring her for now. The boy grinned. He was maybe 17, acne-scarred and full of misplaced confidence. Nah, just talking to the pretty lady here. She's not interested. Is that so? He turned to Sarah, giving her a slow once-over that made my blood boil. Is he the sort of boyfriend? I mean, no offense. His gaze turned to me. But you don't look like her type. What have you got on her, 10 years? 15. Sarah exhaled sharply. I'd walk away, kid. He laughed. What? Not my fault you're into angry old dudes. Come on, a hot thing like you want someone who can actually keep up. He leaned in closer and dropped his voice to what he must have thought was seductive. Someone who can go with you all night. I lost it. My hand shot out before I could stop myself. I grabbed the front of his hoodie, yanked him off balance, and slammed him against the nearest wall. My fingers curled around his throat, not tight, but firm enough that his smirk faltered. "Kieran," Sarah gasped. "She said walk away," I growled, eyes boring into his. "You ever fucking look at her again, let alone speak to her, and I'll make sure your own mother doesn't recognize you when I'm done. Got it?" The boy's Adam's apple bobbed. He tried to play it cool, but his heart was racing. I could hear it. "Damn," he wheezed and then turned to Sarah as far as my grip would allow. "Babe, if I die right now, at least I died for love." "Oh my goddess," Sarah muttered under her breath. "I'll fucking kill you if you keep talking." I snarled, voice dripping with acid. He tried to speak, choked instead. "Would be worth it." I was half a second from snapping the little punk's clavicle when Sarah's voice cut through the red-hazed fog in my head. "Enough!" I froze. Sarah stepped between us, grabbing my wrist with both hands and yanking me back. Her eyes blazed with fury, but not just at the boy. At me. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed. "He's an idiot, but he's a kid." "You expect me to stand by while some pubescent idiot tries to feel you up in public?" "You're overreacting," she snapped. "He didn't touch me. He wanted to. Not your business, Kieran. He was harassing you." "And I was handling it," she snapped. "Whether it's vans or dumbass kids, you don't get to show up playing protector whenever you want, Kieran." The teen, still rubbing his neck, muttered something under his breath. I growled, low in warning. "You too," she said, rounding on him. "You shouldn't be talking to girls your age like that, let alone an adult. Have some fucking respect." For a second, the kid looked genuinely embarrassed. Then he shoved his hands in his pockets and walked away, muttering something that sounded suspiciously like, "Damn, she's even hotter when she's mad." Sarah didn't even flinch. I stood there, still buzzing with adrenaline and shame, while she fixed me with a look colder than any slap. "I was just trying to help," I muttered darkly, more angry with myself than anything else. I did it again. I overstepped when it came to Sarah and got animosity for my troubles. "I don't need your help, Kieran," she said quietly. "I don't need anything from you." Before I could respond, another voice called out behind her. "Sarah?" "Lucian." He approached, brows raised, concern etched into his features. He took one look at the scene. Me rigid with fury, Sarah with arms crossed, the scent of tension thick in the air, and understood instantly. His hand went to the small of her back in an act of subtle dominance. "The concession line is ridiculously long. I figured we'd just get dessert after dinner. Everything all right?" Sarah exhaled, leaning into his touch. "Now it is." Lucian turned his attention to me. "Kieran," he said with a courteous nod. I didn't return it. He turned to her, his voice gentle. "Ready to go?" "More than ready." And just like that, she slipped her arm through his, and they walked past me. I flinched when her shoulder brushed mine, but she didn't even turn her head. I stood there long after the door closed behind them, fists clenched at my sides, and the overwhelming urge to bash someone's skull in, maybe the teen, preferably Lucian, returned with a vengeance. Serafina's povey. Even after I slid into Lucian's car and buckled my seatbelt, my hands were still trembling from my fury. My nails bit into my palms, and the air inside the sleek interior felt too warm, too tight, even as he turned on the air conditioning. Lucian glanced over as he pulled into traffic, his hands steady on the wheel. "You're fuming," he noted with a small smirk, the dash lights casting a soft glow over his sharp features. "Of course I am. That idiot was leering at me like I was some MILF from his high school daydreams," I muttered. "And Kieran strangled a fucking kid." I shook my head. "Old enough to be his mother," I muttered bitterly. "Yeah, if I got pregnant at like 12. Lucian chuckled, fucking chuckled. I shot him a sharp look. He held up one hand, palm facing me. "I'm not laughing at what happened, just at the idea that you still don't see what everyone else does." "Which is?" I asked flatly. "That you're stunning, Sarah. It's a hazard, really. You should probably start carrying a warning sign." I rolled my eyes, but a small part of me warmed at the compliment. He reached over at a red light and gently took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "I mean it," he said, more softly now. "You walk into a room and men forget how to breathe. They're drawn to your charm like a magnet, and I can't even blame them." "That's..." I shook my head, desperate not to let self-doubt creep in. but Lucian's words didn't quite make sense. Celeste was the one who turned heads, the one who attracted male attention like moths to a flame. Not me. I couldn't even get my husband to love me after 10 years. Hey, Lucian's thumb paused mid-stroke. Where'd you go? He asked softly. I forced a smile. Nowhere. He sighed. Look, I'm not excusing what happened back there, but you handled yourself with grace. He squeezed my hand. You always do. This time my smile came more easily. Thank you. Just so I'm clear, I'm not allowed to strangle the next guy that hits on you? He asked, smirking again. I rolled my eyes, laughing softly. What is it with alphas and violence? I guess you just have the ability to make a man take leave of his senses. I laughed again, but a part of me stilled. Is that what it was with Kieran? Did I make him take leave of his senses? I snorted quietly. Yeah, right. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, my pulse slowly easing as the city passed by outside the window. I expected Lucian to take me to another one of those rooftop lounges or another chic private restaurant, but instead, we turned into a circular driveway lined with elegant lanterns, and the car was immediately approached by a valet in uniform. Lucian grinned at my confused expression. Surprise. A revolving restaurant, not just any, this was Orem, perched atop one of LA's high rises like a glittering crown. The kind of place you needed to book weeks, months in advance, unless, of course, you were Lucian Reed and the world rearranged itself at your feet. I stared up in awe, stunned to silence. Lucian squeezed my hand to get my attention. I mean, I don't mind them serving our food in the car, but I've heard the inside of the building is stunning. I laughed giddily as I stepped out of the car, thanking the valet who'd held the door open. The elevator ride was smooth and silent, and when we stepped into the dining area, the panoramic view stole my breath. The entire floor turned ever so slowly, giving diners a 360-degree view of the city skyline. The lights below twinkled like stars, and the interior, muted gold and charcoal velvet, was pure, understated luxury. Shit, maybe I should have worn the dress and heels Maya picked out. I had them reserve the west quadrant for us, Lucian said, guiding me toward a semi-upright booth with a velvet curtain pulled halfway closed. You said you like watching the sunset, and it's simply divine from this angle. I blinked, stunned. That was weeks ago. I mentioned it in passing once when we were walking out of OTS. You remembered that? I remember everything you say, he replied simply, sliding into the seat across from me. From the moment we sat down, the service was flawless. The waiter addressed me by name and presented a custom menu that included my favorite dishes, things I hadn't eaten in years. Even the wine list had a vintage I once offhandedly mentioned I loved but could never afford. I stared at the glass in my hand, then back at Lucian, who watched me with an unreadable expression. Why are you doing all this? I whispered. It felt too much. Overwhelming. Because you deserve to be cherished, Lucian said. And because I want you to know that I'm serious. I don't just want to be your trainer or an escort to a party or someone to glare at your ex. I want to be more than that. My breath caught. I know things started off unconventionally, he went on. When I saved your life and invited you to OTS, I didn't think it would be more than that. But it is, Sarah. Your beauty and strength and resilience leave me in awe of you. He reached over and took my hand in his. Sarah, if you'll have me. I want to stand by your side, not just as a friend. I want to be your boyfriend, your partner, your protector. I want to be there for you the way no one else ever has. The sincerity in his voice nearly undid me. After everything I'd been through, being cast aside, loathed by my family, dismissed and ignored, it was hard to believe anyone wanted me, not out of duty or atonement, but simply because they chose to. I want that too, I murmured, voice trembling. I choose you, Lucian. His eyes lit up with a joy I felt rushing through my body right down to my toes. He laced our fingers and leaned in slowly. I did too, my heart fluttering in my chest. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my lips, and I hoped that this kiss, the windows shattered. Lucian and I jerked back as screams pierced the air and glass rained down like glitter. OTS-honed instincts took over, and I shoved myself out of the booth just as a hulking rogue leapt through the now broken pane, his paws nearly missing me. Two more followed, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Chaos erupted. Diners ran in every direction, some ducking beneath tables, others frozen in fear. Lucian, I gasped, fear gripping my heart like a vice. He was already taking his shirt off, his eyes darkening. "Get out," he said lowly, his gaze fixed on the first rogue that had turned its vicious attention on us. "I can help," I said. "You've trained me to—" "No," he snapped, and I flinched. Sometimes I forgot Lucian was an alpha because of how gentle and warm he was, but the authority in that one word reminded me. "You have no wolf. You're not safe here." "But, get out. Go with the staff. They'll get you to safety along with everyone else. Don't argue." Lucian was already shifting. Bones cracked, fabric tore, and where the man had been a second ago now stood a familiar massive black wolf with piercing blue eyes. He lunged without hesitation, colliding with the first rogue midair. "Lucian!" I cried, ducking as claws swiped too close. He roared and turned to me, his wolf's eyes heavy with the unspoken command, the plea. And then he turned back to the second rogue, sinking his teeth into the wolf's neck with brutal precision. My fists clenched. Every part of me screamed to stay and fight, to throw a chair, stab a fork into something's eye, anything. But Lucian's eyes, the fear in them when he looked at me. I turned and ran. An older man in a suit was already ushering panicked guests toward a stairwell. "This way, miss. Quickly, please." I followed, shoving past the chaos, heart pounding. The stairwell was crowded, with people shouting and jostling each other. Somehow, I made it down to a lower level, a side exit leading out into a quiet alley. 2 black SUVs idled there. The suited man opened the rear door of one and gestured for me to get in. "The Alpha insisted this vehicle take you to safety," he said. I hesitated. His gaze was calm. "He arranged the route himself, Miss Serafina. You'll be safe." Still, something twitched in my instincts. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. There was no sign of fear from the staff member, not even a hint of adrenaline. That was strange, wasn't it? The other diners were panting, panicking, crying, genuine reactions. This man looked like he was escorting a brunch guest to their seat, and how had Lucian found the time to arrange an escape route? "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, voice casual. "The Alpha will join you shortly," he said, urgency bleeding into his voice. "We've been instructed not to delay." I climbed into the SUV, still wary, and the door shut behind me with a thunk far too final. The windows were blacked out. The locks clicked. "What? Hey!" I slammed my hand against the drawn partition. "Hey, what is this?" My heart stuttered as the car started moving. I fumbled for the handle. It didn't budge. Not good. Not good at all. I slammed my hands against the windows. They were reinforced. No way I could smash them. I yanked out my phone, but the screen showed no signal. My mind raced. This wasn't Lucian's doing. This wasn't some standard protocol. This was a trap. I'd been taken. Panic curled through my gut like smoke, creeping up my throat and threatening to choke me. My limbs began to shake, adrenaline giving way to a creeping numbness I couldn't stop. I banged on the window, then the partition, screaming now, loud, hoarse, desperate. "Let me out! Let me out!" But the SUV kept moving, gliding eerily smooth down God knows what road, and still no one answered. I sank into the seat, heart thundering in my chest. My breath came fast, too fast. My vision started to swim. The temperature inside the vehicle seemed to shift, too warm, then too cold. My skin prickled, then flushed. The shadows inside the cabin lengthened. Or maybe I just couldn't keep my eyes open. My head lolled back against the headrest. My fingers tingled. Something was wrong. There was a faint, bittersweet scent in the air, slowly growing stronger, choking. Shit, I'd been drugged. The realization struck me a heartbeat before the world started tilting sideways and everything went black. Serafina's POV. I woke to the sensation of motion, the jarring bounce of tires on uneven ground. My head throbbed. My mouth tasted like copper, and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was or why I couldn't move my arms. Then it hit me. The restaurant. The rogues, the staff, the fucking SUV. I gasped only to realize my mouth was dry and my arms were tightly bound behind my back. The seat beneath me was the same smooth leather from before, too pristine, too polished, too wrong. The bittersweet scent still lingered faintly beneath something sharper, sweat, and the metallic tang of fear, mine. I shifted slightly, the hum of the car engine steady and cruelly calm. My wrists stung. I twisted them instinctively, trying to get a feel for the bindings, zip ties, unforgivingly tight. "Finally awake, princess?" The partition was down now, and the driver's voice floated through, coarse, amused. Panic flared, my heart pounded, but I forced my tone to be steady. "Where the hell are you taking me?" He chuckled, eyes never leaving the road. "Patience, princess. You'll see soon enough. Wouldn't want to spoil the surprise." "Stop calling me that," I spat, my fear giving way to irritation at the smug, patronizing tone. He chuckled dryly. "But that's what you are, aren't you? Alpha Edward's precious little princess." I frowned. "What? Ow!" I yelped as my head banged against the window when the car hit a vicious bump. Where were we going that the terrain was so uneven? "Oops, watch it, princess." I scowled. "What the hell are you talking about?" I snapped. I was a lot of things to my father. A precious princess wasn't one of them. The man twisted slightly, enough for me to glimpse the nasty grin on his face. "You're Alpha Edward's most prized daughter. He gave you all the riches and love and care in the world, except now he's gone and left a big fat target on your back." He winked and turned back to face the road. I stared at the back of the driver's head for a stunned minute, trying to process his words. Then I threw my head back, and a hoarse bark of laughter burst out of me. I saw his arched brow in the rearview mirror. "Something funny?" "Oh my gods," I wheezed. "Oh, the fucking irony." I'd spent my whole life in Celeste's shadow, wishing I could be her, that I could receive just half of the love and adoration she so effortlessly attracted. Be careful what you fucking wish for. "You dumbass." I shook my head incredulously. "You have the wrong girl," he snorted. "Excuse me?" I bounced on the seat as the car hit another bump. "I'm not Alpha Edward's prized daughter. My father loathed me. I was an embarrassment and a disgrace. He spent my whole life pretending I didn't exist. My younger sister Celeste is who you want." He chuckled, the sound scraping along my nerves. "Nice try," I gaped. "You think I'm lying." "I know you are. You can't talk your way out of this, princess. I'm not a fucking princess." I kicked the back of his seat in frustration. "Are you hearing me? I'm not the daughter my father favored. Fucking Celeste. Even when she wasn't all up in my face, she still managed to make my life miserable." "Then why did he try so hard to protect you?" I stilled. "Huh? 2 months before we killed him." "Fuck you for that, by the way," I hissed. He snorted and continued. "He desperately tried to protect you, erased every trace of you, both digital and paper, but finding you wasn't hard." I stared at him, stunned. Why would my father? "That's just further proof," I said, my frustration twisting my voice. "He practically disowned me when I got married. That was him just wiping away all traces of me." The man's grin in the rearview mirror didn't waver. "That's not what we heard. Either way, someone went to a lot of trouble to keep you hidden. That makes you valuable to us." "Valuable how?" I bit out. He shrugged. "Bait. Bargaining chip. Example. Pick one. Alpha Edward might be dead, but if you were so precious to him, then you mean the same to your brother, to your pack." I laughed again, the sound bitter and hollow. "You're in for the shock of your life. If I wasn't so intent on getting out of this frightening situation, I would be looking forward to the rogues' reaction when they found out they'd picked up a pebble in their search for a diamond." I stared out the window, watching as buildings thinned into woods and the streetlights grew sparse. Desolate didn't begin to describe it. We were heading into the middle of nowhere, and I had no way to get out of this. No wolf, no phone, no one. Lucian would be losing his mind by now. I hoped he hadn't been hurt in the attack. I tugged at the zip ties again, hissing when the plastic dug deeper into my skin. I would no doubt have bruises. "So that's it?" I muttered. "Just kidnap some girl based on some bullshit theory?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "She's stalling," another voice said, and I leaned to the side to see another rogue in the passenger seat, an older man with graying hair and twitchy hands, the staff member who had led me to the car. How had they planned this? How did they know I would be at that restaurant? "She knows we're right." "No," I said coldly. "I just think it's pathetic that you're pinning your little vendetta on someone who's never even been a part of her father's circle." The driver's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. "Then why did he try so hard to protect you?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't even have a theory. My father had made my life miserable. If he'd really hidden my existence, it wasn't out of love. It was shame, control, maybe regret. None of it mattered now. He was dead, and I was still somehow being punished. The road dipped, curving sharply as we entered some abandoned industrial area. The SUV rattled over potholes, headlights slicing through patches of fog and overgrown brush. I knew if I didn't do something soon, I'd be gone without a trace and any hope of being rescued. My breaths came faster. I shifted my weight, testing the give in the seatbelt, in the zip ties, in the door. Nothing. No weapon, no backup. I closed my eyes, fighting back angry and frustrated tears. How unlucky did I have to be? Just when things were starting to look up in my life, when I was beginning to find a sliver of happiness, it had to be so cruelly yanked out of my grip. Then the world exploded sideways. Metal slammed into metal, and I was thrown violently against the door. Tires screeched, and I heard the unmistakable crunch of fenders and the groan of warped steel. The SUV spun, swerved off the road, and finally slammed into a concrete barrier with a jarring crash. Everything stilled. I blinked, stunned, my ears ringing. There was a sharp sting on my forehead, and something warm was trickling down my cheek. For one terrifying moment, all I could hear was the hiss of the engine and the fractured wheeze of my own breath. Then came the footsteps, fast, angry. The passenger door was flung open. The older man scrambled out, stumbling as he tried to regain his footing. He was speaking frantically. The words backup and attack filtered through the ringing in my ears. I twisted, straining to see what was happening. And then I heard him. "You have 3 seconds." A familiar voice snarled, low and dark and barely human, to step the fuck away from the car. Kieran. Relief and something sharper, hotter, shot through me. I wanted to cry and scream in equal measure. The rogue lifted his hands, trembling. "Wait, don't." A blur of motion, a sickening crack. The man went down. The driver lunged for something beneath his seat, probably a weapon, but the driver's door was already yanked open, and Kieran was on him. Fangs bared, his fists were brutal and fast, and when he pulled the man out and tossed him onto the gravel, I saw blood. A lot of it. Then he turned to me. "Sarah," his voice ragged with fury, seemed to sear through me. "Kieran," I breathed. I didn't know how he kept doing it, how he always knew, always found me. The shooting in the park, the van in the street, even the stupid teenager, Kieran always showed up when I needed him, whether I knew I needed him or not. But I was grateful. Gods, I was so damn grateful. I let out a long, shaky breath and closed my eyes as relief flushed out the fear and agitation. "I've never been so happy to see you," I murmured. "Kieran's Pav." As soon as Sarah and Lucian left the theater, my wolf instincts had been clawing at me, an unrelenting, restless pull in my chest that I couldn't ignore. At first, I fought against it. I just had one altercation with Sarah, and I knew she'd be livid if I gave in to the need to follow her and make sure she was okay when she was still on her stupid fucking date with Lucian. But Ashar was very rarely agitated, and his emotions saturated through mine to the point that I could barely think past the frenzy. Finally, I reached out to the security team that was always watching Sarah, and they told me they'd lost her. She'd gone into Orem. There'd been a rogue attack, and she'd never come out. My blood ran cold, even as a surge of heat blasted through me. I let Ashar take control, and every second felt like a lifetime as I drove madly through the streets of LA. Her phone had been switched off, and tracking her was monumentally harder since she didn't have a wolf, but she'd used the same brand of perfume and lavender oil for 10 years. I could track her in my sleep. I followed the thin, fading trail of her scent toward the edge of the neutral zone that bordered rogue territory. That was when I saw it. An SUV idling just long enough to make the hair on my neck rise before pulling out toward the industrial area. I didn't need confirmation. I knew down to my bones that Sarah was inside. I didn't wait for backup, didn't even try to call anyone else. My hands tightened on the wheels until my knuckles cracked as I aimed my car at theirs and floored it. The collision was bone-rattling, metal screaming as my front end smashed into their rear. The impact shoved their vehicle sideways, tires skidding over cracked asphalt. I didn't give them a chance to recover. Ashar surged, eager for blood. The rogues inside were shouting, curses, threats. The sounds barely audible over the rush of my own heartbeat. I was out of my car before it fully stopped, resisting the urge to let Ashar lose. Not just yet. The first 2 rogues tumbled out of the SUV, clearly caught off guard by the sudden hit. They barely had time to register what was happening before I was on them. If it had been any other situation, I might have relished the crack of the first one's neck, the satisfaction of breaking through the other one's ribs. But all that mattered was Sarah. And when I opened the back door and found her bound, terrified, but otherwise unharmed, I thought I would collapse under the force of my relief. "Sarah," I panted, my ragged voice foreign in my ears. "Kieran," she panted, closing her eyes, "I've never been so happy to see you." That sentence was like a balm, soothing the wild rage and panic crashing through me like an avalanche. I crouched by the door, my eyes scanning her face, checking, assessing, making sure she was in one piece. A tear slipped down her cheeks, mixing with the blood trailing from a cut on her forehead as my heart thudded in my chest. Fuck! I cursed myself. I'd been so blind with my fear and adrenaline, I didn't even think about how the collision would affect her. Once again, in my bid to help Sarah, I'd ended up hurting her instead. "I'm so sorry," I said, low, breathless. She turned slightly, showing me her bound wrists at her back. "Zip ties," she whispered hoarsely. I didn't hesitate. A claw emerged from my finger, and I sliced the plastic clean through, careful not to cut her. She gasped, rubbing her wrists as blood rushed back to her hands. The sight of the red rings sent another wave of anger through me. "Come on," I ground out, trying to keep my voice soft as I gently helped her out of the totaled SUV. My arms tightened around her as she collapsed against me, unsteady on her feet. "I got you," I said tightly as her hands fisted the front of my shirt. Hooking my arms under the back of her legs, I carried her, holding her tightly to my chest, back to my car. The front of the car was wrecked, and I had no idea if it would run, but I gently put her in the back seat. She exhaled shakily. "Thank you, Kieran. The screeching of tires snapped my attention to the road. A second SUV was speeding towards us. Sarah gasped. "Back up," she whispered. They called for backup. A sick, deadly kind of satisfaction ran through me as the car skidded to a halt and rogues spilled from inside. I hadn't even begun to satisfy the urge to burn the world down for daring to hurt Sarah. I turned to her. "I'll be right back." "Kieran," but I was already out of the car and shifting mid-stride, my bones snapping, muscles ripping and reforming as Ashar surged forward in a blur of claws and fur. The first went down under the sheer weight of my body, my jaws locking around his throat and tearing until the fight left him in a wet, choking gurgle. I tossed him aside, already turning on the second. He swung a silver blade, but Ashar was faster. I barreled into him, the force of the impact sending him sprawling into the side of the wrecked SUV. His head hit metal with a dull crack, and before he could recover, my teeth found his shoulder. He screamed, high and sharp, before I silenced him with a final, crushing bite to the neck. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing, heavy, feral, and the faint metallic tang of blood coating my tongue. But my work wasn't done yet. A third vehicle had stopped further down the street, and more rogues spilled out. Ashar bared his teeth, dripping with blood, and welcomed the challenge. The first of the new wave rushed me, snarling. I lunged to meet him, jaws snapping around his forearm and twisting until bone splintered under my bite. He screamed, dropping his weapon, but I didn't let go. I slammed into him, using my weight to drive him to the ground before ripping out his throat. Another came from the left. I ducked under his swing, pivoted, and tore into his side. Hot blood spilled over my tongue. A third tried to come at me from behind, but my wolf's ears caught the scrape of boots on gravel, and I kicked out with my hind legs, sending him sprawling. I pounced before he could stand, ending him with a brutal snap of my jaws. They kept coming, but none of them were strong enough. Ashar was in full control, a relentless force of muscle and rage. Every strike was precise, every movement driven by the singular goal of avenging Sarah. When the last rogue finally staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm before turning to flee, the others followed suit, disappearing into the shadows they'd crawled out from. Cowards. The street went silent again, heavy with the scent of blood and the echoes of screams. My focus snapped back to the only thing that mattered. Sarah. She was slumped in the back seat, still tenderly rubbing her wrists. It was like seeing her injuries for the first time, the bruising along her jaw and wrists, the blood at her temple. My heart clenched so hard it hurt. Guilt sank its claws into me. If I'd been faster, if I'd given in to my instincts earlier, I could have stopped them before they laid a hand on her. The scent of her blood cut through everything else, and for a moment I thought I'd lose control entirely. But then she smiled weakly, her voice a hoarse whisper. Ashar. Hi. The vice around my heart eased ever so slightly as Ashar nudged at her shoulder, breathing her in to reassure myself she was alive. I hadn't lost her. Serafina's Pove. I managed a strained smile that cost more energy than I had. Thank you for the rescue, I whispered, my voice frayed from fear and fading adrenaline. Both of you. Ashar whimpered, looking pointedly at my wrists. It was a little surreal to be in the presence of Kieran's wolf. He was majestic with his golden-brown fur glinting in the light of the setting sun and his dark eyes watching me intently. I'm fine, I said. I can hold on till we get medical attention. It was meant to be reassurance, more for him than me, because I wasn't even sure I believed it. My wrists throbbed, the zip-tie marks burning under my skin, and my temple was slick with half-dried blood. Every breath made my ribs ache. Ashar huffed, his breath hot against my cheek, but instead of stepping back, he lowered his head to my shoulder. I thought it was just more scent-checking, his way of making sure I was still whole. But then his tongue swiped over the cut at my hairline. Kieran. I tried to lean back, but he didn't stop. His tongue was rough, warm, and gods, it shouldn't have been comforting. And yet, instead of pain, a strange heat spread through the wound. The throbbing dulled until it was gone altogether. What the? I touched my temple. The cut was closed. No blood, no swelling, just smooth skin where a gash had been seconds ago. Before I could process it, Ashar's head dipped lower, brushing against my jaw, then the bruised skin along my wrists. His tongue rasped over the marks, each touch sending a pulse of heat through me. The pain ebbed in waves until it was nothing but the ghost of what had been there. I stared at him, wide-eyed. You healed me. He pulled back just enough for me to see the blood-matted fur around his mouth. His eyes locked on mine, dark and intense in a way that made my breath hitch. Then, without warning, he stepped back and began to shift. Bones cracked, fur receded, muscle and skin twisting until Kieran was kneeling there in the street, naked, chest heaving, eyes still wolf-bright. Sarah, he said, my name rough and low like gravel in his throat. And then he was on me, one hand cupping the back of my head, the other pulling me forward until his mouth crashed against mine. Serafina's Pove. My mind exploded into a whirlwind. I should have pushed Kieran away the second his mouth claimed mine. Every rational thought in my head screamed that I should. But there was this inner pull, this traitorous force buried deep in my bones, that made me lean into him instead of away. It was like my body had been waiting for this, and the relief in his kiss sank into me like sunlight breaking through a storm. His lips were hot, demanding, almost frantic, and underneath that hunger, I could taste the edge of his panic and something wild, sharp, intoxicating. I could feel the wild thud of his heart, feel his passion in the unrestrained way his mouth moved against mine, in the desperate press of his palm at the back of my neck, in the raw, untamed energy that poured from him. Without thinking, I responded, unable to help the small, helpless sound that escaped me. My fingers curled into the warm, hard muscle of his shoulders, clutching like I could anchor him, like I could calm whatever storm was tearing him apart inside. The heat from his sweat-slicked skin seeped into me, chasing away the lingering cold that had wrapped around me ever since the rogues had taken me. And the longer his mouth stayed on mine, the further the pain in my body receded. My ribs didn't ache so much, the throbbing at my temple faded, the sting in my wrists dulled to nothing but a memory. It wasn't just Ashar's strange, healing touch. It was the way Kieran kissed, pouring everything he was into it, leaving no space for fear or pain to survive. He wrapped his arms around me and pulled me out of the back seat, anchoring me between his body and the car. He deepened the kiss, angling my head so his lips could move more fully over mine, and a low, guttural sound rumbled in his chest. His tongue swept against mine, coaxing, claiming, tasting me like he couldn't get enough. Heat unfurled low in my stomach, curling and tightening until I was breathless. Gods help me. I didn't want to stop. I matched the urgency of his mouth with my own, letting myself drown in the taste of him. The mix of adrenaline, sweat, and something simultaneously achingly familiar and deliciously foreign. My pulse roared in my ears, my fingers sliding from his shoulders to his neck, feeling the strong line of muscle there as I pulled him closer. His arms tightened around my waist, smashing me harder against the hard lines of his naked body, and I whimpered, my hips canting of their own accord. And then I felt it. Hard, heated, pressing into my hip. A jolt of reality crashed through the fog. I froze, the haze of heat in my veins icing over in an instant. Kieran's hand was still at the back of my head, holding me to him like he thought if he let go, I'd disappear. His breathing was harsh against my lips, and when I broke away, he chased me forward, his mouth brushing mine again like he couldn't help himself. "Kieran," I said sharply, shoving at his chest, his naked, toned, slick chest. He resisted for a heartbeat, his grip tight, before finally letting me push him back. His eyes glinted like obsidian jewels, pupils blown wide, lips swollen and wet from our kiss. He'd just taken on a mini army of rogues and hadn't looked as wrecked as he did now. For a charged moment, neither of us moved. The air sparked between us like a live wire dancing dangerously close to a pool of gasoline. One wrong move and the world would explode around us. I swallowed tightly, and training my eyes above his shoulders felt like a more challenging task than childbirth. Sarah. The guttural, raw way he called my name, every muscle in his body pulled taut, was the last pushback from the cliff's edge I'd almost dived off of. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, pressing back against the car in a bid to put space between us. Kieran's brow furrowed, like he couldn't understand why I'd pulled away or my words. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" My voice sharpened. "I mean that while I'm grateful you rescued me, I'm not going to thank you with my body. We are not doing this. We are divorced, Kieran. You've moved on, I've moved on." His jaw tightened, his chest rising and falling like he was still coming down from the fight, or the high of the kiss. "Moved on?" he echoed, voice low. "The way you just kissed me didn't really scream moved on." I stared at him, disbelief spiking into my already frayed nerves. "That's not fair." "Who gives a shit about fairness?" he said, his gaze flicking to my mouth in a way that made my skin flush hot again. "You kissed me back, and I felt how much you wanted to. You enjoyed that just as much as I did, Sarah." "Because," I broke off, hating the way my cheeks burned. "Because I'm still recovering from being kidnapped and possibly murdered, or gods know what other horrors that'd been planned for me. I was shaken. I don't know, I wasn't in my right mind. Fear and adrenaline blasted all my common sense into smithereens." I crossed my arms tight over my chest, as much to keep from shaking as to hold my ground. "Don't mistake that for anything else." Kieran's expression darkened. "That wasn't just adrenaline, Sarah. I know you. And in all the years we were together, we've never kissed like... Gods, do you hear yourself?" My voice rose, slicing through the cool night air. I didn't want to hear him say what I already knew. In all the years we'd been functionally intimate, it had never felt like that. The raw, carnal heat, the electricity I could still feel sparking through me. "You know me?" I shook my head. "No, you fucking don't. And I'm not going to stay here and argue with you when you're stark fucking naked a couple of feet away from dead bodies." "You had no problem kissing me in the same situation," he shot back. I exhaled sharply. "We've established that that was a shitty lapse of judgment on my part. I was out of my goddamn mind." Something flickered in Kieran's eyes, hurt, maybe, but it was quickly masked by stubborn defiance. "You can tell yourself that all you want doesn't make it true." My temper snapped. I yanked the door open, slid into the back seat, and slammed it hard enough to make the frame shudder. "Drive me home." Kieran didn't move, his hands tightened at his sides, his jaw flexing like he was biting back words he wanted to spit at me. The silence stretched until I couldn't stand it anymore. "You know what? Forget it." I shoved the door back open, my movements sharp, angry. "I'll walk." An aggravated sigh. "Sarah?" But I was already out, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed off the empty street as I stalked away from the car, my sandals crunching against gravel and broken glass. The adrenaline from earlier was ebbing fast, leaving only exhaustion, anger, and the faint tremor of something I didn't want to name. The night air felt thick, pressing in on me with the weight of what I'd just done. My pulse was still unsettled, my breath uneven, as if my body hadn't yet decided whether it wanted to keep running from Kieran or run back to him. I was still replaying the way his lips burned through me like a heated rod through butter, my skin tingling from the weight of his body against mine. The heat of his arousal pressed against me. I could still hear the way his voice had cracked when he said my name, still trying to shove that sound into some dark corner of my mind, when headlights flared against the cracked asphalt ahead. Another car came barreling down the street from the direction Kieran had come, engine growling low like some sleek predator on the hunt. My stomach dropped. The familiar silhouette of an Aston Martin filled my vision, closing the distance too fast, tires squealing as it swerved and came to a haphazard halt directly in my path. The driver's side door swung open, and out stepped Lucien, Serafina's Pove. Lucien's sudden appearance froze me mid-step, and my body seized up. My first instinct was to react, to explain something, anything, as though I'd been caught doing something wrong. Like a teenager whose parent had just walked into her bedroom at the worst possible moment, and her naked boyfriend was hiding out in her closet. My pulse kicked into another gear as he came closer, my mind running wild with explanations for why my ex-husband was naked behind me and I looked kissed within an inch of my life. But Lucien's expression wasn't suspicious. His gaze swept over me once, sharp and assessing, and then he sighed with relief. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he said, stepping forward to wrap me in his arms. More rogues showed up, and disposing of them took longer than I expected. My stomach twisted. Right. The rogues. While I was tangled up in Kieran's arms, Lucien had been dealing with his own chaos, fighting for me. He could have gotten hurt, and here I was, flushed and guilty over a kiss I never should have let happen. Especially mere hours after Lucien asked to be my boyfriend. My stomach churned, and I thought I was going to be sick. I felt so fucking awful. What had gotten into me? Why had I let that happen? Are you okay?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. His familiar scent wrapped around me, and I closed my eyes, breathing him in, hoping it would banish Kieran's scent that had inundated my senses and wouldn't fade. Lucien gently pulled away but held me at arm's length and did one more once over. Nothing I couldn't handle. He gave me a broad smile, but there was a shadow in his eyes that told me it hadn't been as easy as he wanted me to think. The guilt pressed heavier. Just because Kieran was the one who got me out of the car didn't mean he saved me any more than Lucien had by taking on those rogues at the restaurant. And Fuck! Are you sure you're okay? Lucien's brows furrowed into a deep V. What? His gaze shifted behind me and I stiffened. I watched his eyes as he took in the dead rogues behind us, and naked Kieran. But other than the sharp tick of a muscle in his jaw, his facial expression didn't change. "Kieran?" Lucien nodded, like back in the theater, except this time, the gesture looked stiff, forced. Heat warmed the left side of my body, and I instinctively bit my kiss-swollen lips as Kieran's deep voice rumbled through the air, and through me. "Lucien." Lucien arched a brow. "You did this?" "I would have left some for you if you hadn't been so slow." My breath hitched at the obvious bite in Kieran's voice, but Lucien took it in stride. One hand fell from my arm and reached out to Kieran. "Thank you for saving her." I ground my teeth so hard it would have been audible if the tension between both of them wasn't humming at a deafening volume. "I didn't do you a favor," Kieran ground out, not taking Lucien's hand. Lucien's hand dropped to the side and he nodded. "Still, thank you. She's in safe hands now." The rest of his unspoken sentence was audible. Kieran could leave. "Sarah?" I flinched at the brusque way Kieran said my name. I forced myself to turn to him and exhaled softly. He was wearing a pair of gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt he must have had stashed in his car. "I'm fine," I said softly. "Thank you." Again. His dark eyes flickered with something I felt deep in my chest, but he tore his gaze away the next second and stalked wordlessly to his car. Lucien and I stayed seemingly suspended in time as we watched Kieran enter his car. The engine sputtered twice before it came to life. I winced slightly as he drove past us. I'd ruined the G-Wagon once with my blood, and now the bumper was destroyed. It felt like I was taking my first breath in a while as I watched Kieran's brake lights shrink to the size of fireflies and then disappear altogether. "Sarah?" Lucien's gentle squeeze pulled me back to the present. I sighed softly. "I'm glad you're okay." Lucien's eyes softened at that, but then his attention shifted slightly, his gaze dipping over my body, pausing on my arms, my temple. I tensed. I didn't know what I looked like. I couldn't feel the pain from the injuries anymore, but I could feel an awareness in all the spots I'd bruised and bled. And from the look in Lucien's eyes, I got the feeling that maybe he, too, could see traces. "You're not hurt anywhere, are you?" he asked, his tone light but edged with a quiet intensity that made me think he already knew the answer. I shook my head a little too fast. "I'm fine. Really, just tired. Good." He opened the passenger door of the Aston, holding it for me like the perfect gentleman he was. "Let's get you home." The drive started out silent, save for the low purr of the engine. I watched the streetlights streak past in blurred ribbons, the rhythmic glow matching the uneasy beat of my heart. It seemed to thud louder with every passing moment of silence, and I felt the urge to fill the air with something, anything, before the weight of unspoken things crushed me. "Well," I finally said, forcing a crooked smile, "I'd say our first date was eventful." Lucien glanced at me, one brow raised in amusement. "That's one word for it," I chuckled under my breath. "You don't think this is, I don't know, an omen, do you?" That was apparently the wrong thing to say. Lucien's foot slammed the brake pedal hard enough to send my body lurching forward. The seatbelt locked across my chest with a sharp bite, and I had to catch myself on the dashboard to keep from smacking my head on it. "Lucien!" I gasped, my heart in my throat. He looked at me with an intensity so sharp it pinned me to the seat more effectively than any seatbelt could. "No," he said, his voice low and certain. "Not an omen. We will be happy together, Sarah. I promise you that." The certainty in his tone caught me off guard. It wasn't just confidence, it was conviction. Like he'd already carved the future into stone and dared the universe to try to change it. I blinked at him, momentarily robbed of words. "That's a bold promise." I managed. His gaze softened, though the stubborn edge didn't vanish. I don't make promises I can't keep. I wanted to ask what made him so sure, especially since there was a group of rogues who had it out for me. But before I could, we were pulling into my driveway. Lucien killed the engine and turned to me. "Do you need me to stay tonight? Just in case?" Any other night, the offer would have been tempting. Usually, I thoroughly enjoyed Lucien's company, but tonight, it offered guilt rather than comfort, and I desperately needed space. Space to untangle my thoughts, to scrub the lingering feel of Kieran's lips on mine and his hands on my skin. Maybe if I could forget the kiss ever happened, then I could finally look Lucien in the eye. "There's no need," I said, my voice careful. "I'm just going to go to bed." Lucien studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but I'm just a call away." Before I could thank him, he leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. The contact was chaste, sweet, but it didn't bring with it the rush of heat like Kieran's kiss. My stomach twisted so tightly it hurt. "I'll be better prepared for our next date," he murmured with a faint smile. I managed a small one back. "I'm holding you to that." He placed a hand to his chest. "Scout's honor." I laughed softly, but it died in my throat when he took my hand and squeezed. "I really am sorry our date turned out like this, Sarah. This was not the start I wanted for our relationship." I smiled, even as the word relationship felt like a boulder sitting on my lungs. "It's not your fault, and you protected me." I leaned in and kissed his cheek. "Thank you." "Always," he whispered. I slipped out of the car before I could say or feel anything else I wasn't ready for. I didn't look back until I'd closed the door behind me. The house was quiet, almost oppressively so. I didn't turn any lights on as I kicked off my sandals and made my way to the bathroom upstairs, my body heavy with exhaustion. The shower was scalding hot, steam wrapping around me until the mirror fogged completely. I scrubbed harder than necessary, like I could wash away the memory of Kieran's touch if I just applied enough pressure. But no matter how many times I dragged the loofah over my skin, I could still feel him. The press of his lips, the strength in his hands, the warmth of his skin, the heat of his arousal, the low, rough sound of my name breaking in his throat. He'd been right. In the 10 years we'd been together, we'd never had heat so potent as the 2 times we'd kissed since we divorced. What sick fucking joke was that? I leaned my forehead against the cool tile, water streaming down my back, and cursed under my breath. When I finally stepped out, the bathroom felt too warm, the walls too close. I toweled off, slipped into a loose t-shirt and shorts, and collapsed into bed with my phone in hand. It was ridiculous. I knew it was ridiculous, but I still opened the browser and typed, "Is it normal to have feelings for an ex-husband who never loved you?" The results were depressingly varied. Articles, forum posts, personal blogs, all of them circling around the same core advice. Don't repeat past mistakes. Remember why it ended. People don't change overnight. I scrolled and scrolled, my chest tightening with each variation of "you deserve better." They were right. Of course they were right. Kieran had never loved me the way I deserved to be. He'd spent our entire marriage pining after my sister, and now that he had her, what? Now he wanted me? I shook my head and turned off my phone, tossing it away like it was the cause of the tight knot twisting in my chest. What happened today wasn't about Kieran. It wasn't even about me in the way it felt. It was science, psychology, a neat little phenomenon called the suspension bridge effect. Heightened arousal from fear and danger could trick you into attributing that adrenaline to attraction. That was it. That had to be it. I wouldn't entertain any other alternatives. If Lucian had been the one to fight off those rogues, if anyone had, I probably would have felt the exact same way. My body was wired for survival, for latching onto the person who just kept me alive. It didn't mean I wanted him. I stared at the ceiling, telling myself over and over, Kieran is not the right choice. He has never been the right choice. I thought about the quiet peace I'd managed to build in the months since the divorce, the sense of stability I'd fought tooth and nail for. The idea of throwing all that away over one stupid heat-fueled kiss was unthinkable. I couldn't. I rolled to my side and closed my eyes, trying to breathe evenly. The sheets were cool against my skin, but not cool enough to erase the phantom heat that still lingered like a weighted blanket. I desperately willed sleep to break through the tangle of thoughts and emotions and claim me. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd wake up and put all of this behind me. I just had to survive tonight first. Serafina's POV. After a fitful night of thankfully dreamless sleep, I woke up before sunrise to a text from Lucian. Lucian, take today off from OTS training, doctor's orders. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. You're not my doctor, he responded instantly. Lucian, maybe not, but I am someone who prefers his dates alive, unbruised, and stress-free. Humor me. I rolled my eyes, but the truth was, I wasn't in a hurry to step back into the relentless grind of training drills and simulated crises. My body was healed, thanks to Ashar's strange magic that I didn't even want to think about right now, because thinking about Ashar led me to thinking about Kieran. But the emotional bruises were still tender. So I humored him. And I took it a step further. I booked a spa day with Maya. Seeing as my day off was also her day off, she was more than happy to join me at the spa. The receptionist at Crystal Petals Spa greeted us with that hushed reverence they reserve for people who look like they need expensive pampering. Within minutes, we were both wrapped in soft robes, our hair pulled back, cucumber water in hand. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and citrus, the low hum of tranquil music seeping into my bones. So, Maya said, as we settled into plush chairs for our pedicures, first date with Lucian, spill. I sipped my water slowly, buying time. It was fine. Her eyes narrowed over the rim of her glass. Fine? You're telling me the alpha who basically oozes aristocratic charm, who could buy all of Hollywood and have change to spare, only gave you a fine first date? Okay. First of all, I shot her a glare. Until the last breath, Maya. Really? She smirked, not an ounce of shame or remorse on her face at the mention of the X-rated movie she'd tricked me into picking. Did it set the mood? If the mood you were going for was awkward as fuck, then yeah, it set it pretty perfectly. Ugh, she threw her head back. If you didn't have a son, I would swear you're a virgin. Somehow, the mention of my son instantly sent my train of thought hurling towards the forbidden mental barriers I built around what happened between me and my son's father yesterday. Anyway, I shook my head in a bid to rein in my traitorous thoughts. The date was actually going really well, before the rogues attacked. Maya sat up ramrod straight, water sloshing over the edge of her glass, her feet slipping out of the pedicurist's grip. I shot her an apologetic smile as Maya's eyes bulged. Rogues? I nodded, the same ones that attacked my father's funeral and shot me in the park. Holy shit, Sarah, Maya gasped. The day after rogues attack you, you don't call me and say, hey, Want to go to the spa. You call me and let me know what fucking happened." I winced. "I'm sorry, but it wasn't a huge deal, I swear. Lucian disposed of the ones that attacked the restaurant." I refrained from adding that Kieran painted the streets with the blood of the rest. She set her glass down on a nearby stool and reached for me, cupping my face. "And you?" she asked, her sharp brown eyes assessing me. "Did you get hurt?" I thought about the cut on my forehead, the bruises on my wrists, the ache in my ribs, and then the soothing warmth of Ashar's tongue and Kieran's kiss washing it all away. My cheeks heated up under Maya's touch. "I'm fine," I said, pulling my face away. "It wasn't a big deal, I swear. Except it was." But I didn't know how to tell Maya what happened between me and Kieran. Not when I was so desperate to forget it. And the last thing I needed was Maya picking up on my still simmering confusion over the kiss and making me dig deeper into feelings I did not want to unearth. Anyways, Lucian's already planning our second date, and there's no way it'll go as badly as the first one. She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. For now, we sat in comfortable silence for a moment, letting the nail technicians work. Then I glanced at her sideways. "How are you and Ethan?" Her shoulders tensed immediately. "We're still in a cold war," she said, her voice carefully even. Something in my chest ached at that. "Still, Maya, it's been 2 days." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "We're both stubborn and apparently bad at apologies, not that I have anything to apologize for." I frowned, fighting the urge to shake her. "You love him." "Yeah," she said softly, staring at her toes. "We've established that." "Then why?" "Because," she broke off, her jaw tightening. "Every time I'm ready to reach out, I remember what you've been through, and I just get so angry. It's all so messy. How can I look you in the eye knowing that I'm going home every night to the man who contributed to making your life a living hell?" She exhaled. "I dunno that I can be with someone like that." That hit me square in the gut. "Maya." She looked up, startled at the sharpness in my tone. "I am not some fragile baby wrapped in tissue paper," I said, leaning towards her. "You don't have to repress your feelings on my account. I want you to be happy. If that means being messy, being with Ethan, then be that. Do what you want, Maya. I promise I'll be fine, as long as you're happy." Her eyes softened, but there was a flicker of sadness there, too. "You really mean that?" "I do. More than anything." I squeezed her hand. "I've been rooting for you and your mate since day one, and finding out he was my brother hasn't changed anything. Even though I've never experienced the fated bond myself, I've longed for that kind of connection since I was old enough to understand what it meant, and you found that. So I want you to dive in headfirst without fear. That soul-deep certainty, that electric pull that wasn't just chemistry, but destiny, written into your bones. If I ever found something like that, there was nothing in the world that could keep me away from it." Maya studied me for a moment, her gaze shrewd in that way she had when she was trying to decipher something, mainly when she knew I was holding something back. "Sarah, was Kieran ever the object of that longing?" Her question punched the air out of my lungs. "What?" She shrugged, her gaze gentle. "You were married for 10 years. Surely there's a part of you that wished you two could have shared that kind of bond." I forced out a humorless laugh through the boulder suddenly lodged in my throat. "Once, yes, stupidly, but I know better now." Her brows drew together. "Because of Celeste? Because of reality," I said bitterly. "If Kieran was ever going to feel that bond with me, he would have by now. But he spent our entire marriage pining after Celeste. She's his mate, his destiny." "You don't know that for sure," Maya said softly. I shook my head. Why else would he be so indulgent with her? We might have lived as strangers for a decade, but I knew Kieran well enough to know that there were a lot of things he couldn't stand, and he'd withstood all that and more for Celeste, defending even her ugliest traits. What more verification did I need? The truth sat sour in my stomach. I hated that I could still feel the echo of that kiss, hated that some secret part of me still wanted him to look at me the way I'd seen him look at her when I knew it would never happen. Maya reached across the space between our chairs and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "When you finally get your wolf, you'll find your mate." "I know it." Her brows wiggled. "Who knows? Maybe it's even Lucian. That would explain why he's so enamored with you and treats you so specially." I smiled faintly, touched by her certainty. but her words stirred up a different kind of doubt. Lucian's touch was steady, safe, like a calm harbor after a storm. I liked it. I trusted it. But it lacked something I'd felt in every nerve of my body when Kieran kissed me. Heat, passion, electricity, bone-deep hunger. Not that any of those things were necessarily good for me, especially if I felt them for my ex-husband who was in love with my estranged sister. Fuck, my life was a mess. I was about to change the topic when the spa door swung open and a high, lilting laugh cut through the peaceful music. A trail of ice spread down my spine at the sound. There was no mistaking who it belonged to. The trio of women swept in like a perfume ad come to life. Glossy hair, designer sunglasses, the faint scent of some cloying floral fragrance that made the air feel suddenly too sweet. Their chatter was loud enough to pull every pair of eyes in the room toward them. Maya's hand tightened on mine again, this time in silent warning. My home, the mall, the theater, and now the spa. I couldn't go anywhere in this damn city without running into Kieran or Celeste. And this time, I had the pleasure of not only Celeste but her minions too.